I'm going to call our meeting to order. This is our regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors for Tuesday, August 11th, 2026. Welcome to the meeting. Thank you for being here. Before I move into any other items, I need to go over a statement, just kind of a reminder of the rules on public comment based on a few things I've noticed over the past month. And so I'll start that now. I want to briefly review the guidelines for public participation to ensure everyone has equal opportunity to be heard in a fair, respectful, and orderly manner. Our board welcomes and relies on public comment, including criticism of county policies, procedures, programs, services, and actions of this board. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks. If you continue after I've stated that the time's expired, and thank you, then your microphone will be muted. And we'll move to the next speaker. All comments should be directed to the chair and the board, not to staff members. Please remain relevant to the item under consideration and deliver that in a respectful and civil manner. We have a commitment to civility that encourages respectful dialogue, values differing opinions, and promotes meaningful discussion free from personal attacks. Promoting solutions is more productive than being hard on individual people. Threatening, profane, abusive, or discriminatory statements or conduct that disrupt the meeting or create a hostile environment will not be permitted. These rules apply equally to everyone and to help ensure every member of the public has the opportunity to participate while allowing the board to conduct the county business efficiently and respectfully. Thank you, and we do have copies of this available for the public if anyone wishes to take a look at it. And now we'll move on to check in to see if we have any moments of silence today.
Yes.
Go ahead,
So I won't say any names, but we've had a tragic event in Upper Lake this last week with the family, and I just want to, the community of Upper Lake's really devastated, and wanted to just pray for the families and the friends, because it really touched a lot of folks from around the United States who have been worried about that situation, who are from Upper Lake. So just want to give our thoughts to them and pray for the family to recover, and in both aspects, so the father and the mother. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Go ahead, Supervisor Spatier.
Yeah, this has been something that's been ongoing, unfortunately, for many years, but in the past couple of weeks, I think it's been really highlighted, and that's some of the tragedies that we've seen on our roads. I know in the Lower Lake area, we had 2 deaths from a head-on collision. In the Nice Lucerne area, Clear Lake Oaks, we had a pedestrian that was hit by a vehicle. There was another vehicle incident where folks lost their lives. And just this morning at 5:30 a.m. in the city of Clear Lake, somebody lost their life on Highway 53. School has started. There's a whole lot more traffic going on. People turn out that they're somewhat in a rush to get places, unfortunately. And while I would definitely request and ask that we engage our law enforcement as Board of Supervisors to try and make sure that there's law enforcement out in our roads. It takes 2. It's also the drivers out there that need to do their part, and it's a struggle to continuously be at the top of the list in the state of California per capita for the amount of deaths that we have on our roads. So please, slow down. Leave early. Be respectful to everyone that is on the roads that are sharing that road with you. It is unfortunate that so many families have to be tragically torn apart like this from all these vehicle incidents that we have. So I'd like to keep all of those folks in our thoughts today.
Thank you. Thank you. Supervisor Owen, would you lead us in the pledge? Thank you. Do we have any extra items that aren't appearing on the agenda?
No, Chair, we do not.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to approval of the consent agenda, and I do have knowledge that we're going to be pulling item 5.3. Are there any other items from supervisors that you request to pull? Not seeing any. Anyone in the public have any items on consent agenda they wish to request be pulled? Anyone online? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for action on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 5.3.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that carries unanimously. And we will move on to our 902 item, which is public input. And this will be for any items that are not appearing on the agenda today. Do we have anybody in the room who wishes to speak on any items not on the agenda today? Yeah, this is this for something that's not on the agenda? Then you need to come to the mic, please. And if you could state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yeah, Erin Dozel. I'm sorry, I have to excuse myself and get to another meeting. The birds were having a meeting on the way. The egrets are amazing here. I've been on and off biking for 25 years. I've been in 3 minor car accidents when I was a driver. I've not been hurt on my bicycle. I feel safer on my bicycle. I've gotten out of the way of several car accidents. More bicycles on the road would equal a healthier community. I'm having autoimmune issues from car exhaust. This is very serious. It's real. I did call and report a highway patrol officer that was idling their vehicle for a very long time in front of the massage parlor. It's illegal to idle vehicles in the state of California. I'm looking for a job with the health department. I'm going to leave my resume right here. I got to get going. I love you guys all.
Thank you. Thank you. Next person.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Supervisors. Margot Kambara, General Plan Advisory Committee Representative, speaking for myself. Opportunity knocks. The general plan and local area plans are once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to chart the destiny of unincorporated Lake County. If the general plan and local area plans updates are done well, we will have a Lake County that we can be proud of. We will leave a legacy for our children, grandchildren, and their children. While you may prefer to give department heads autonomy until work products come to your board for consideration, your gentle direction now may ensure creation of superior work products that reflect the priorities and values of the community. Updating the general plan and local area plans is a big job. It is difficult under normal conditions. For Community Development Department, this is one of many demanding projects. Under pressure to finish the project by the end of the calendar year, CDD set a schedule that eliminates community meetings, including one requested by the General Plan Advisory Committee. The GPAC and the LAP advisory committees would appreciate meeting with CDD to discuss the final drafts and the comments that were dismissed. The communication builds confidence in the process and in the work products. Although extending the review schedule has been suggested to CDD, CDD declined without identifying the schedule drivers. On Thursday, the Planning Commission will hold a workshop on the general plan and local area plans. In one meeting, the commissioners will discuss 7 general plan chapters, 8 local area plans, 4 appendices with active content. The general plan chapters cover weighty subjects such as health and safety and agriculture. It is not known whether the meeting duration will be 4 or 8 hours. For the Planning Commission to succeed, the workshop should allow for thoughtful discussion and review of the general plan chapters and local area plans. Having several meetings to cover this material could yield higher quality input from the commissioners. At present, there is little or no time for public comment at the Planning Commission meeting on the general plan and local area plans. For example, Lake County Farm Bureau submitted a letter that was dismissed for not being specific. The Farm Bureau addressed protection against conversion to urban uses. If the Farm Bureau was not clear enough, follow-up by CDD or its vendor is warranted. Significant stakeholders, such as the Farm Bureau, should be accorded more than one pitch before striking out. Similarly, Scotts Valley Advisory Council submitted recommendations in April. Only one comment
That was the time,
addressed.
thank you.
Thank-
Do we have anyone else in the room? And we'll go online. No hands? Okay. Then I'm going to close. What was that? We have one now. Okay. Zoom user one, go ahead and state your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
Guy Layla on Pillsbury Family Farms. There comes a time when protecting what is wrong stops looking like loyalty and starts revealing the values the government's protecting. What the community would consider as a weakness seems to become a known strength in our local government, knowing that something is wrong and choosing to protect it anyway. And that speaks directly to the value of the public trust that this board shares with the community. Somewhere along the way, the government learned to confuse defending itself with leadership. Standing behind a bad decision isn't strength, but refusing to acknowledge the obvious isn't strength either. Protecting someone simply because they work for the government isn't strength as well. 5 elected officials remaining quiet because confronting their own administration might be uncomfortable isn't strength either. Real strength is being able to turn around and face your own house. It takes very little courage for the government to exercise power over somebody who has less power. The government has the attorney, has the departments, has the money, writes the rules, and enforces the rules. It doesn't tell the community how strong the government is because it could defend its decisions. It shows us how strong it is when it discovers one of those decisions is wrong. That's where the character gets tested. Eventually, you have to decide what you're protecting. Is it an institution, employee, a decision, because admitting it was wrong would be more embarrassing? The principles the government is supposed to represent is a reminder that the money doesn't measure the moral strength of a department, and neither does a presentation. The department can show this board every accomplishment on PowerPoint, every grant received, every dollar brought into the county, but bringing money in is only half of the responsibility. It's easy to celebrate it when it's coming in, and the accountability begins when you're just as willing to examine how the money went out. But remember, protecting a department isn't also questioning because it might expose something more uncomfortable. Integrity is being able to follow that money and question the decisions being made with it. And as a reminder, accountability isn't an attack on the government. Accountability is what keeps the government worthy of the authority the people will have to have it. And public trust isn't something that the board is entitled to just because you were elected. It is something that you earn by what you're willing to question, what you're willing to correct, and what you're unwilling to protect when you know what's wrong. That's the integrity that I hope this board chooses to represent going forward. Muleha.
Thank you. No other hands? I'll close public comment and move on to our 903 item, Pet of the Week.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Officer Rue of Lake County Animal Care and Control, and this is Rolo. Rolo is a 1-year-old pit bull mix. He's a bit high energy at first, calms down though, as you guys can see a bit. Loves toys, loves other animals, and he is up for adoption at the shelter as of now. He's been with us since June. So come on down, do what other animals we have. If you don't like Rolo, we have plenty of others.
Thank you for coming in today. Not seeing any comments, I'll move on to our 9:15 item, which is our 6.3 item, setting as the Lake County Board of Supervisors, consideration of the amended Clear Lake Watershed and Chi Memorandum of Understanding Co-Management Agreement, adding Koi Nation of Northern California, updating the signature page, and authorize the county administrative officer to sign. B, setting as the Watershed Protection Board of Directors, consideration of the amended Clear Lake Watershed and Chi Memorandum of Understanding Co-Management Agreement, adding Koi Nation of Northern California, updating the signature page, and authorize the Water Resources Director to sign. At this time, we're going to need to move this item to a date in the future regarding some changes that were just coming up in the last 24 hours or so. So that's what we have in front of us. If no supervisors have questions, I'll open it to the public if there's any comments just as related to whether or not we can continue the item. Not seeing any in the room, nothing online. And do I have consensus to move that to a future date? Thank you. And it is too early to move on to our 9:30, so I'm going to look at item 7.2, Advisory Board Appointments. And this is consideration of the following advisory board appointments. The first one's going to be the Fish and Wildlife Advisory Committee. The second one is going to be the Food Policy Advisory Council. It looks like we have 2 vacancies and 2 applicants for Fish and Wildlife, and 1 vacancy and 1 applicant, it appears, for Food Council. Does somebody want to start with the Fish and Wildlife? Any discussion on candidates there? Not hearing any. Any discussion on candidates for the food policy?
Just, Serena will be replacing Rebecca since Rebecca has moved on to a different job.
Okay. All right, so I'll open it up to the public in the room. Is there any comments regarding these applicants or positions? Not seeing any, nothing online. I'll bring it back to the board, and let's start with Fish and Wildlife if somebody wants to make a motion. Or
Move to approve Sarah Ryan and Andrew Scully to the Fish and Wildlife Committee.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that carries 5-0.
And I move to approve Serena Onate to the Food Policy Council.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that carries 5-0. Now we're going to move on to 7.3, consideration of an appointment to the Lake Pillsbury Fire Protection District Board of Directors. And it looks like we have 1 applicant for a vacant position. Is that correct, Johanna? Okay. Any questions from board members? Anybody in the room that wishes to speak on this applicant or this board or position? Not seeing anyone online? Bring it back to the board if somebody wants to make action.
I will motion to appoint Corrine Maskell to the Lake Pillsbury Fire Protection District.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that carries 5-0. And reports, or, okay, I'm going to go on to reports. I probably surprised you guys with that. So I don't know if I'll go first today. I just have a couple things. And I wanted to give a shout out to our Water Resources Department. On July 17th, I was notified that that a boat that had been in the water in the San Joaquin Delta for 8 months had been trailered into Lake County. Fortunately, the owner took it directly to our inspection station down at the county corporation yard. Our 2 Quagga ramp monitor folks that were assigned to that inspection station and decon station noticed suspicious material in numerous places on the hull of the boat, notified the Water Resources muscle staff who went down there. believed that it appeared that it could be mussel material, so they collected it all and appropriately quarantined that vessel. There was water in the inside the vessel, which could have housed mussels as well. So that was deconned twice, and the boat was quarantined for 30 days. And the material was collected and sent to the lab. Fortunately, a couple days ago, it came back tested negative, but wanted to shout out because they did a good job responding, and this is exactly why we have that program, to prevent these kind of things. So everything went correct on that. The next one, I wanted to give a second shout out for Water Resources Department for their staff going out yesterday. As you've heard me talk about before, we have a group of volunteer trails workers that have been working all summer, keeping debris cleared off the trails, so they're available for public use. We've got a fire road out there that had a lot of down logs and stuff on it between the gun range and Adobe Road, and that was beyond the capacity of volunteers. Our staff went out yesterday in a few hours and completely cleared that, so it can be, it's not going to be open all the time, but if we had an emergency, at least it's clear now. So wanted to shout out again for Water Resources. That's it for me. Anybody ready? Go ahead.
Happy birthday, Chair.
Thank you.
And belated happy birthday to Supervisor Sabatier.
Thank you.
So again, I'm keeping my calendar vague, but I am meeting with Congressman Thompson this week, and I have several internal committee meetings, external committee meetings, and a municipal advisory council meeting, and then yeah, I'll pass it to you.
Okay. I have on my calendar the mobile home owner town hall. Supervisor Sabatier, do you have that for Wednesday? I have the same. Okay. And then Thursday I have Golden State Natural Resources. Friday, Potter Valley Project check-in. Then Monday, Risk Reduction Authority. And then another mobile home park owner town hall. Back here on Tuesday.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Sabatier?
Yeah, I'll just speak to what happened in the last weekend. Just appreciate the meetings that started with the county and both cities to talk about how we were going to celebrate America's 250th anniversary. Love seeing just the flags on our dais. That wasn't what always happened before. All of the other stuff that we put up in our parks, all through the cities and throughout the county. I just think it's something that shows that there's activity happening, and we're trying to bring people together to celebrate something as one. Not only did everybody do the usual, the 4th of July, but this past weekend with the drone show, I thought that was pretty amazing, a first-time experience for those, and I think, unfortunately, we set ourselves up to have to do that again. So we're going to have to figure out how that's going to work out, but I just love seeing us coming together and just celebrating community, celebrating who we are, and I'm sure there's many different views of what that is, but the fact is we were all together doing the same thing, and I love doing that. So appreciate the work that was put on for that. Had a great meeting yesterday. Keep pushing and pushing for Lake Pillsbury. Appreciate Supervisor Crandall for his efforts. And just, to me, full of good news and positive hope as to where we're going with that. Just thankful for the federal administration's support and what we're receiving at this moment in time. And so that's good news for me. Hopefully by the end of this week, we'll be in negotiations with the property owner in the city of Clear Lake for veteran housing that I'm working on through the COC and some other groups. We have Calvet, we have Nation's Finest, we have others that are involved with that as well, with the state funding from the Home Key Plus that would be made available. And so hopefully negotiations will go fast, because I think the property owners are highly motivated, especially in the fact that it's for veteran housing. Other than that, have our APC meeting tomorrow, and meeting with constituents, and just a bunch of other things going on. So I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Okay, this past week, last Friday, I met with Congressman Gallagher and did tour the geysers, the geothermal geysers, which was really wonderful. And I'd like to thank Calpine for putting together a wonderful tour. This coming week, I have Animal Control Advisory tomorrow, along with the Energy Ad Hoc Committee, and I'm going to try to make the Vet Connect open house here in Lakeport. It runs from 3 to 7 p.m. Thursday, we have the Lake County Recreation Agency Board meeting and Middletown Town Hall. And I'd like to also try to make it by the Middletown Art Center. That property has sold, so they will be leaving by the end of October. And they have their last exhibit being, they're inviting everybody in to see their last exhibit. They're open Thursday through Monday from 10:30 to 5. Friday, I have a doctor's appointment, and Saturday, I'm going to watch my grandson play football.
Thank you, and by my clock that I'm using, I've got 2 minutes. I don't think we have time for anything else, so I'm just gonna be in a brief 1 or 2 minute recess. And we'll get started right back again. I'm going to call our meeting back to order. And we're going to be at our 9:30 6.4 item. This is consideration of an interim urgency ordinance placing a moratorium on mobile home park gross rental rate increases within the unincorporated area of Lake County. And this is Supervisors Crandall and Sabatier, and I'm not sure who's going to open it up.
I can go ahead.
ahead.
Yes, if you remember, going back about a year and a half or so, I know that it's almost 2 years, yes. I've met with some groups in different areas that have been affected by their mobile home park pass-through fees and rent increases. And so we started looking at different ordinances, looking at an urgency ordinance, and looking into different ways to protect or put together some sort of ordinance or something like that. But in the meantime, we are looking at the moratorium. So with the interim urgency ordinance for the moratorium, we're looking at putting that together so that we can at least start out and then move forward from there to looking at the actual ordinance itself. So bringing this forward to see where we can go with this, and let everyone have their opportunity to speak. I know there's a lot of people here from different places, mobile home parks, and then there's also going to be owners that are going to chime in and have their opportunity to speak as well. So just that's a timeline that we've went through. A lot of folks have been coming before the board talking about this exact very thing. So it's here, and I'll let Supervisor Sabatier go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. As many of you know, when this first came to the Board of Supervisors for the original ordinance that was proposed for discussion, I voted against the ordinance itself, but wanted to join in the committee to make sure that I brought my perspective for what I hoped would be a balanced approach to how do we figure this out, how do we, what do we do that is fair across the board. I've gotten a lot of emails in the last 2 days, and I appreciate that. And I some of you received emails from me letting you know, giving you a heads up that this was happening. I wanted as little amount of people to be surprised, because I don't like to be surprised, and I would expect the same from you guys. And some of the comments have been helpful, and some of the comments have been not so helpful. But overall, what I would like to offer is this is meant to be a short term, and I'll put blame on myself. It's taken too long to get us to the point where we offer an actual solution. And so what we have intended to do, I know a lot of people see this as a global punishment or potentially a global threat when you are a mobile home park owner. And some mobile home park owners are doing it really right, and some are not. Not all mobile home park owners are equal, just like not all mobile home owners are equal. Everyone has their own perspective and do their own things in their lives. And so until we really start talking about the RSO, the rent stabilization ordinance that we have been working on, a lot of the emails were more about the specifics of what rent stabilization looks like, and this is not what this discussion is. That will come at a later time. And so what I want to do is I want to be respectful of the emails that I received, and from the perspective of the mobile home park owner, in the sense that you will be prohibited from doing something, and not the other side where the mobile home owner will be prohibited from doing something. And so I'd like to put a time limit and hope that that can help maybe alleviate the potential stress or the potential concerns that mobile home park owners are going through, and say that this will expire within 60 days. Not that it will be continued, because it's a 45-day moratorium. It can be extended if we want to. And I'd like to offer that we put in a expiration date. Obviously, we can change that if we want to, but that's not my plan. My plan is to say this is the deadline that we need to bring an RSO back, because we shouldn't put people in a position where they're prohibited from doing something rather than getting to that final discussion and then deciding what it is that we are going to do. And that's going to be up to this board to make that final decision. So I used to be a landlord. I managed 4 different units, 3 units in one house. So I understand the potential financial stress that mobile home park owners might be feeling from having this conversation today. And I would like to make that suggestion that we put a deadline, to put a fire under our seats to make sure to come back with the final potential solution so we can have the final discussion and make a decision of where it is that we're going to go. It would only be a 60-day pause on increase of rent. After that, it would expire.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair?
Well, I watched the meeting from a year ago, and it was a really thoughtful presentation by Supervisor Crandall. And the direction of the board was to form this ad hoc committee, engage with stakeholders, bring back an ordinance, and also look for other relief measures. And has there been any stakeholder engagement?
Yes. We met initially with the park owners, and then we've consistently been meeting with the folks at the parks. Well, I want to say we haven't met with the park. They've been at like the town halls and whatnot, but we've spent a couple of meetings. I know I've spent a couple of meetings with them. I don't know if other supervisors have. I know a lot of them come to the town halls, but I know we've met once or twice with the park owners, and that's why we're having these other meetings with them in these town halls, so they have an opportunity to talk about the actual rent stabilization ordinance.
Okay, because I have many parks in my district, and the park owners that I have heard from and I actually sent to staff so that they could be part of the conversations haven't been a part of those meetings. So for one, I don't think that this meets any threshold for an urgency ordinance because it took too long to do the work doesn't equal urgency. And we have a narrow margin of how to define that, and county council can bring that up and talk us through that. I also am really concerned that we're going to have this conversation with everybody in this room today, which is going to be frustrating and difficult, and then go to listening sessions. I feel like it's a little cart before the horse. I would really have appreciated having these workshops where everyone could engage and talk and work collaboratively, find common ground, and then bring us back something that we can, that we all feel good about, that we can work on and we can pass. But right now, I just really don't like how we've kind of dropped this ball on everyone. Yes, they had a couple days notice, but you spent the weekend, and the folks that have been showing up here for a year too. We should have had something to look at before this, and we should have had everybody engaged. And trying to push this urgency ordinance is not appropriate.
Supervisor Owen?
Well, I'm actually in support of the urgency notice. I originally, when this came before us over a year ago, I was absolutely opposed to it because I do not believe, my core beliefs is I'm against government control and overreach. However, since then, I've learned of of some of the parks taking advantage of our elderly, and my sympathies are with them. And I think that for that reason, we need to get involved. And so I am for putting something forward to buy us a little more time while they can do the work. This is not a quick fix. And all of us are on committees, and all of us get kind of dirt thrown at us from time to time because we haven't moved our committees that we are on forward quite quick enough to meet other people's standards. And it is a long process to get through and to come up with something well designed that can work for everybody. So in my opinion, I think that our constituents have been waiting for over a year, and I'm actually glad to see something come forward to help them. My question was whether we could, to our CAO yesterday, was whether we could retroact it back, but apparently we cannot under an emergency ordinance. So, so I'm in favor.
Okay. Did you have something else?
Yes, I just, and I understand Supervisor or Vice Chair, I understand your sentiment when it comes to the meetings with the others. I do. I just know that in the initial discussions of all of this, and I think that's why the moratorium's coming first, is because the specific park owners, not all, and it's unfortunate, have been very retaliatory about this discussion and have affected numerous parks and seniors with their enhancement of fees. There's even a threat to close down a park right now just because we're talking about, so it's one of those things where, in a way it's like, well, if we stop or don't do it, then these bad actors kind of get away with that. And so I know it's a couple of bad apples that are making it hard for the rest, but I know in different counties they have moratoriums or ordinances in place to protect their people, and I just think that we need to be on board with that. So it's unfortunate, but before we do the ordinance, we will have these meetings with the town halls with these folks, and they'll have the opportunity to come forward before that ordinance is made. In the meantime, the moratorium is just there as a stopgap to make sure they don't throw any more, fees or anything on top of it.
Okay. So before I make final decision, I'm going to have to hear from all the public comment, but I've got several concerns and legal questions. I'm examining all this from a procedural and legal standpoint, so I need to get these questions out. Also, I want to make sure the public hears what my concerns are in case they want to, respond to any of that in public comment. But the first concern that I have is with the findings and recitals in the ordinance. These ordinances, urgency ordinances, have to have clear evidence of a threat to public safety, health, and welfare. I'm not convinced at this point that the recitals in that are in full are strong enough to withstand a judicial review. So when we're crafting legislation, one of the things that we should be looking at is, will it uphold a judicial review if it gets challenged? So that's what I want to, ask about for that. I also don't see any framework regarding what county agency will administer this ordinance. What county agency will enforce it? So would that be admin? Would that be community development? Who would that be that would do the enforcement and the administration? I'm also concerned that we have no fiscal analysis for the ordinance. We don't have any idea what it would cost to administer and enforce. Also have some questions about the gross rental. It's very clear on some examples of what wouldn't be part of it when you're talking about the electricity, power, or electricity, water, garbage, things like that. And I think it's open for, there could be other fees that happen in some of these parks that I'm not aware of. I haven't got feedback on it. And if so, for example, like extra vehicle parking fees or something. I don't know if any park has anything like that or any other fees, but that's a question I have. I think the strongest aspect of the ordinance is where it talks about preserving the status quo. The courts look at that, and that's a strong provision for these urgency ordinances, but we've also got to satisfy the evidence to withstand a judicial review on does it meet the law for the urgency. I also feel like I did go back and watch our August meeting, and my recollection and what I had hoped that would happen is, and I know these stakeholder meetings are now scheduled for this week and next week, but I had hoped that some of those could have happened so that I could have had all the information in front of us today before we make a decision on this. Because I think there's, I have to look out for the homeowners. I also have to look out for the interest of property owners, and I have to look out for the interest of the County of Lake and its capacity to handle something. The other thing that I don't see in the ordinance is a appeal or a due process procedure. Like if somebody had a dispute on either side, whether it's a homeowner or a mobile park owner, I don't see the framework for an appeal right to ensure that we have due process. And, under the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, due process, appeal rights, people have to be able to be heard. So I'm concerned about that. And I think that's a summary of what my questions that I feel like I need answered before I can vote on an urgency ordinance. So with that, I don't know if there's anything else from the board before we open it. It looks like, yes, go ahead.
I mean, I would love to hear some of those responses. I have responses, but I think I'd prefer Mr. Quintavano provide some response to some of those questions. It's not an apology, but we did work with our county council. You don't see his signature on there. We didn't give it back to him for his final signature, but this has been approved by county council, so it has been reviewed. But I would love to hear some of the responses that he has.
Go ahead if you have information you want to offer to the board.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just briefly, urgency ordinances are primarily governed by government code, for counties, government code section 25123, wherein typically regular ordinances become effective 30 days after the date of final passage, except for specific circumstances, one of which is those ordinances that call for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, or safety, which shall contain a declaration of the facts constituting the urgency and shall be passed by a 4/5 vote of the Board of Supervisors. So typically with urgency ordinances, the declaration that's being referenced in this statute would be located in the recitals, and that's outlined there. And for your board's consideration, should your board decide to adopt this ordinance, which would become effective immediately upon 4/5 vote of the board, staff would recommend that an additional recital be added to that, and so that this ordinance would be offered as amended for your board's consideration, and that recital would be, in quotes, therefore the Board of Supervisors determines that the ordinance is urgently needed for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and welfare pursuant to Government Code Section 25131, or 25123 rather, which is what I just quoted. And as to the issue of the 14th Amendment and due process that was mentioned by Chair Rasmussen, that does speak to the urgent matter that's being proposed to your board, which is reflected in the recitals, and your board has discretion to add to those recitals to reflect the urgent nature for purposes of the immediate preservation of public peace, health, or safety, some of which have been referenced in the recitals themselves in support of that section, which is 25123 sub D of the government code. With that, this being an urgency ordinance, those appeal rights that you referenced or due process procedures that would typically be present in a regular ordinance, which is from your board's discussion here is being worked on, would not necessarily be required in an urgency ordinance so long as these urgent factors are reflected in said ordinance.
Thank you. Do we have anything else from the board before we open to the public? Go ahead, Supervisor Owen.
I would say this absolutely qualifies for our constituents' peace, if they're not able to buy food, etc., because of the rents going up so much, that's health and welfare. So I would say this qualifies.
Thank you. Go ahead, Supervisor Sabatier.
And again, my suggestion is a 60-day maximum and then expiration. So this is not a permanent thing. And I guess a glimpse of the thought process that our team has had, which do want to thank Director Turner, our Deputy Director of Housing, Lisa Judd. I hope I said the title correctly. Deputy Administrator. And also Director Dillman Parsons from Social Services has been working alongside with Supervisor Crandall and I on this. But part of the thought process was that as of, if today this is approved, and if the RSO is approved, then it would go back to this date for the review of what increases have occurred, where those, if there were any increases, then they would go ahead and have the enforcement mechanism triggered. Nothing between now and the RSO would trigger an enforcement at that moment in time. And there is not a specific department at this moment in time, because there will most likely, if approved, go out for an RFP for a contractor to do the work. So at this moment, there is no specific department that will have a workload. There is no enforcement between the time, but the enforcement will come eventually to ensure that nobody breached what it is that we are asking for a pause on 60 days. And that enforcement will come when we're finalized, if approved, through the RFP process.
Would it be complaint-driven, I surmise?
We're going to be reviewing, if approved, we eventually will review every rent
Okay.
for mobile home parks. So I don't want to get too deep in the weeds of the
Okay.
RSO, but it does have a reason to explain those aspects to at least help respond to some of the questions that you asked that were not responded to by county council, because that's not the legal questions.
Okay.
I'll just
Go
say, well, given all that, and this urgency ordinance is the only thing between us, there's a lot of uncertainty that we don't have before us, and that really makes me uncomfortable.
Okay. Is there anything else from the board before we open to the public?
I guess I'll make one more comment, and I don't mean to be combative or argumentative. Again, coming from my experience as a landlord, 60-day waiting period, if that's a problem, then your planning of being a landlord has other problems. If 60 days waiting period to ensure that people don't continuously have to pay for a fee that should not go up the way it has gone up for certain areas, that is a good thing. So the discomfort of one versus the other does not balance out to an equilibrium. And so I think we need to think about that.
Okay. Anything else before we open it to the public? All right. I'm not sure how many people are going to speak, but it looks like we could have quite a few. So I'm going to ask that after the first person gets up, if maybe you can kind of form a line as you feel like you want to get up over on the left here, so we can just kind of gauge that, and you'll state your name and you'll have 3 minutes. The line will have to start going back through this side back here. Go ahead, ma'am. State your name and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning. I'm Hillary Mosier, this area's regional manager for the Golden State Manufactured Homeowners League. And I represent members who cannot be here because they're at work, serving in your restaurants, caring for your elderly and ill, and delivering your packages. Others are not here out of fear of retaliation by park owners. They don't want to find a notice of rule violation on their door after coming forward. I would like to congratulate you on placing this item on the agenda. Although park owners will desperately try to intimidate you regarding voting for a moratorium today, these are not the people who have voted for you, nor whom you are paid to serve. Please do not allow predatory bullies to prevail in their efforts to generate unreasonable amounts of money off the backs of Lake County's lowest income homeowners. Although we admit disappointment that we are not here to adopt an airtight rent stabilization ordinance after waiting so long, we want to try to respect your process and we'll be very grateful for this temporary solution in the meantime. One thing I need to plead with you to do is to make a motion to amend the moratorium so that it is retroactive to at least March. This amendment will protect at least the residents of Sterling Shores from the predatory pass-through increases their so-called nonprofit park owner forced upon them as soon as your ad hoc committee was formed for an RSO. This retroactivity has been utilized by multiple jurisdictions across the state to good effect with no problems. Saying that this is not an urgent issue belies the fact that there are park owners right now, this minute, that are increasing park rents when someone is trying to sell their home in Lake County so they can move into assisted living or take a new job in a different county. These uncontrolled increases are preventing sales, although when the park owner sells one of the homes they have reappropriated because previous owners have had to walk away, they lower the rents, perpetrating what amounts to a scam with zero oversight. Regarding concerns Supervisor Rasmussen has about administration and implementation of an RSO, I strongly suggest you don't reinvent the wheel. Look at what has been working for decades in other similar jurisdictions. There are 104 of them. For example, in Humboldt, the RSO is administered through the planning department. As supervisors, you probably don't need to be reminded that you are required by regulations in your housing element as well as by the state to preserve this largest source of unsubsidized affordable housing in the county. Thank you again for your diligent work on accepting this responsibility. Vote for a retroactive amendment and please vote yes on the moratorium. It is urgent.
Thank you.
Good morning, Gail Delane, Clear Lake Oaks. I want to thank our supervisors, Supervisor Crandall and Supervisor Spatier for the work that they've been doing on the ad hoc committee. We have in our park experienced both. We've had a private owner, a woman who owned, was very fair, did not raise rents yearly or without reason, did not pass through charges for things that she's responsible for to us homeowners. I think at the top of the meeting, you read rules and regulations or rules and ways to treat this meeting. And we're asking for those same kinds of rules to be extended to us as homeowners in parks. We were bought 3 years ago, and we immediately went to our Earth meeting. Probably would not have known about the Earth meetings, but we had an urgent issue. We were afraid, we were being threatened, and we went to our Earth meeting and spoke to our supervisor, and our supervisor has helped us in countless ways, met with us. If you have parks in your district and no one has come to you, maybe they have owners that are quite fair. But in most cases, I think people have spoken to their supervisors and let them know that there are problems. So the space rent is one thing, an important thing, but there's another arm to it, the pass-through charges, which go unregulated, which can go to infrastructure issues. I know in our park, we've for a while had some problems with water distribution in the park. So if anything that falls under infrastructure is passed on to homeowners and not dealt with by the owners of the park, it doesn't seem quite fair. So thank you very much. That's all I'm going to say, and we appreciate our supervisor quite a lot. Thank you, Supervisor Crandall, for all that you've done.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Long. I live in Meadow Point Park, which is in Upper Lake. I've been trying to sell my home for 5 months, and I have not had a single offer. Neither my realtor nor I have heard a single negative thing about my home itself or my asking price, which I have reduced by $10,000. Everyone is walking away because of the lot rent. In December of 2025, our lot rent was increased by $350. It's worth noting that the stated reason for doing this was that a rent stabilization ordinance was on the table and they wanted to get ahead of it. I've gone to a town hall, I've spoken to the owner of the park myself, and that was his given reason. So passing an urgent moratorium would make sure that what happened to my park doesn't happen to other people's parks. We do get a statement credit for $350, but it can be taken away any moment. Without that credit, my rent is $995, which is far too much for Lake County, and it's far too much for the retired people that live in the park with me. It's also worth noting that that wasn't the only rent increase that year. Our rent was increased March of 2025, December of 2025, and March of 2026, meaning in the span of a year, our rent was increased 3 times for a total of $430. Even with the statement credit, the rent is too much. I pay $645. I've been told that anyone that purchases my home will have to pay $735, and that's with the credit. Their actual legal rent will be over $1,000. Meanwhile, the park has been selling homes in lots and charging less lot rent than that. Sometimes they're charging buyers of their homes less lot rent than I pay right now. It is because all of this that I am asking, whether it's temporary or permanent, that we get some sort of stabilization ordinance in place that is retroactive back to December of 2025. So my neighbors and I get this $350 credit that could be taken away any moment out of hanging over our heads. I ask that there be a limit to the amount of times within the span of a year a park can increase lot rent. And then I also ask that, and this is really important for me in my case, trying to sell my home, that there be a limit to the amount that a park can increase lot rent for incoming tenants. I can no longer afford to live here. I moved here from Ukiah because it was cheaper. Now I'm being charged Ukiah rents.
I do apologize, but if we can speak specifically about the moratorium and not the future.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so I guess just in summary then, our rent was increased $350 because there wasn't anything in place. And if you pass the moratorium, it will help other parks not have to deal with what we had to deal with. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mary Benson. I'm a real estate broker. I live in Lower Lake. I am a past president of the Lake County Association of Realtors, but I'm speaking as an individual here because this came up so quickly. Our board meeting isn't for another few days, and we haven't had a chance to consider and adopt a position on this. My concern is I'm wondering if the drivers for this moratorium are a few bad apples, like was possibly mentioned, and if so, if it's possible to follow what the city of Lakeport did, which was to do mediation between the owners and the residents and not try to force a one-size-fits-all solution onto the entire county. Unfortunately, it often seems like there are few things more permanent than a temporary program, and I'm afraid that this will end up being adopted and then extended and extended. And there are a lot of flaws in this ordinance as it's written. For example, the federal fair housing laws that we have to take continuing ed on regularly talk about not discriminating against people over 55. And yet this one has a priority for people over 62. So if I'm a park owner and I'm looking at 2 applications, one for a 55-year-old and one for a 65-year-old, I'm going to pick the 55-year-old because I can get 10 years more or 7 years more of the higher rate caps on the increased rent. And I don't think that that's a fair situation. I also think that protecting people over 62 is all well and good. I am part of that class of people, but I do think that people who are permanently disabled or who have other reasons for hardship should also be granted the same kind of consideration. I think that I've spoken with park managers and park owners, and I know that utilities tend to be a cash asset portion of their business. And I think part of the way this is written is they're only looking at the space rent and not the other charges for utilities. And I think the unintended consequence of this could be that more is shifted over onto the utility billing and the surcharges related to utilities, so as a way of recapturing some of what is not gained through increased space rent. So I'm concerned about a number of different things. I would like to see it more closely laid out, how it is that appeals would be handled and how you would calculate. I mean, I saw a reference to the financial position of the park owner, which really shouldn't play into anything, whether a person makes a decision to have a loan against a property or not. I think it should be related on, or determined by other factors, and I did provide you.
I'm going to interrupt because I don't see any of the stuff that you're talking about on this moratorium. I feel you're talking about the rental stabilization ordinance that was submitted back in October or whenever that date was, because I'm not seeing any of those things in there. So I'm confused as to what you're speaking of.
I am speaking from what I downloaded from the agenda today, so I'm not sure, but I'm out of time.
About 55 plus, I don't see anything about 62 plus. It's just very general about just lots and spaces. So that's where I'm getting confused about some of the things that you're mentioning. And I apologize. I would love to give you another 15, 20 seconds because I took that away from you. But I'm hearing you, I'm looking at it, and I'm not seeing it.
Okay.
You need another 20 seconds?
I haven't had enough time to, I wouldn't be able to find it in my documents.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Good morning, Rasmussen and members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Tracy Bajat. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Caritas Corporation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. Caritas is a nonprofit affordable housing corporation. We have been providing affordable housing for 30 years. We have 33 mobile home parks throughout California and in the state of Oregon. Caritas has owned and operated Sterling Shores Estates in Lakeport since June 2014. As a nonprofit committed to preserving affordable housing, we take very seriously both our responsibility to our residents and our obligations under the regulatory agreement with the county and our bond covenants. I'm here this morning to request the board's support in opposing the proposed moratorium and support regarding pass-through of certain operating expenses at Sterling Shore. We have been extremely generous with rent increases at Sterling Shore. The state of California outlines rent increases for mobile home parks and caps annual rent increases at 10%. Over the last 6 years, the average allowable rent increase, Caritas's average annual increase for the residents of Sterling Shores for the same 6-year period was 3.3%. Putting a moratorium or significantly decreasing the allowable annual rent increases would severely impact Caritas's ability to operate Sterling Shores without reducing services and maintenance of the property for our residents.
I need to interrupt. This needs to be a safe space, guys, please.
Thank you.
I don't like the background noise. It makes people feel uncomfortable when they're expressing something you may not agree with, but they need to be able to freely express that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This year, to offset the rising non-discretionary and uncontrollable expenses, such as utilities and insurance, which went up 40% over the last 6 years, we implemented a pass-through expense to our residents. We established a fair, transparent, and consistent process for determining which eligible operating expenses may be passed through to residents at all our mobile home parks. Caritas Caring for Residents is proven by our rental assistance, maintenance assistance, and hardship assistance programs provided to residents in need of financial emergency assistance. For the record, there was that talk about there was an article saying that Caritas increased rent by $300 a month. It was not Sterling Shore. We respectfully ask the board to collaborate with us in opposing the moratorium and support our need to implement pass-through expenses. Caritas has been a long-term partner with Lake County. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next person.
Good morning. My name is Pamela Harpster, and I'm here to actually represent my dad. Robert Reese passed away in October, and he left his home in Sterling Shores. My mother passed away about 6 months prior to his moving into that location, and we talked him into that. So he sold his home, moved there because he wanted to own his own home again still, and he did. He paid for it completely. And when he first moved in, he actually could afford the rent and all of the bills that went along with it. The bills, or the rent at that point in time, 5 years ago, was about under $550 a month. It is currently $860. There has been times when his elderly sister had to help pay for utilities. I've had to help with utilities costs because he couldn't not afford it. If he came back today and tried to apply for the home that he left, he would not qualify based on his income today. But he qualified 5 years ago. So that's the difference that you're looking at. What happens with a person's income actually stays still. If you have a couple that lives there that can afford it based on their 3 times the amount of rent, based on their income, if one of those individuals passes away or moves out, that other left individual will have to move out because they can't afford to be there, and they will not have 3 times that amount of rent. I'm trying to sell this place, and I'm having a heck of a time, and I can't seem to sell it. I've had one person actually put in a bid, and they did not qualify. They had just sold a house, a $300,000 home, but they couldn't qualify for this rent. I mean, for the space rent for the home that they were buying. Nonprofit, I understand. I worked nonprofits many years. I'm probably going to have to walk away and leave this home for a nonprofit when my veteran dad could not afford to live there anymore. I don't know what to say. I do hope that you guys pass this along because I think we need to protect our individuals. We're putting a lot of effort into low-income housing. This is moderate-income housing, but it's supposed to be for equal housing, equal opportunity, and it's not. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Tom Flanagan. I live at Sterling Shores, owned by Caritas. First, I wanted to thank EJ and Bruno for all the work they're doing. And I know they're talking to lots of people. Jessica, you don't think they are, but they are. And we're one of them, 2 of them. So many, I'm trying to think of a diplomatic word, lies and obfuscations are going on, but I'll just touch on a couple of them. The lady from Caritas said they've had a 3.3% interest rate for average for the last 6 years. That sounds really good, but 6 years compounding even 3% is 20% increase for those 6 years. So it's not good. It's not small. The fact that this is not an emergency because it has been around since January. It was an emergency in January, and we tried to convey that, and obviously it didn't work. So the fact that it's been delayed does not make it less urgent, it makes it more urgent. And as far as the 60-day cap, that's fine if the RSO is passed in that 60 days. I think it should continue if the RSO fails to pass. I know things tend to take longer than estimated. As far as covering the costs of this program, the RSO likely will include something like a $5 fee for every park resident and probably the park owners. That's the money. You get a contractor to do it. All these things are non-issues or are covered in the RSO. So it's like somebody is just trying to stir up dust and obfuscate. And the last thing is people with power and influence that threaten to sue or take their ball and go home. That's a sign of desperation, it's bullying, and it should not be catered to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, EJ, Jessica, Brad, Helen, and Bruno. It's nice to be here. First of all, I'd like to thank the ad hoc committee for all of your due diligence. I read all the letters that you received, and I found some of them upsetting myself. because I think you've done a lot of work, you put a lot of time and a lot of effort into both sides in trying to make things fair. I appreciate the fact that you brought forward a moratorium. I do request that it go back at least to March 1st. This was an emergency in 2025, and it's taken us 8 months to get this far. So I know you've tried, but it should be retroactive. I would love to take it even further, but I would like to see it go to March 1st to prevent all the pass-through fees that we have gotten from Caritas. I have attended in person, as you know, or by Zoom since January. I have been speaking for many people who are too scared, too old, or they've given up, or they're still working at 78 years old to pay these fees. My request again is to propose a March 1st retroactiveness. And the preemptiveness, the preemptiveness of unethical business practices has been exhibited since your last August 2025 mention of an RSO. This is where the urgency comes in to some of the board members who didn't think so. As soon as if it's not implemented today, because everybody knows what's going on, give them another 60 days, and they'll start with some more pass-through fees. We have been charged, as you know, for monthly stamps, for envelopes, for website portals, for structural fences, for seawalls. It happens in my mobile home park, and there may be a few people that are really good mobile home park owners that are really caring for their people. Mm-hmm. And that's where we all want to live, and that's where we all thought we were going to live. People are choosing in my park, and a lot of parks, between heat, air conditioning, their medical treatments, in order to keep up with their increases. They're asking their 60-plus-year-old children to pay for Caritas's border fences and their pass-through fees. Anyway, again, I just wanted to thank you for your time and your research, and for the people who say that this is unethical business practice. I think that they're performing unethical business practices, and I appreciate your time and everything you've done. And I ask you, every one of you, Jessica, EJ, Brad, Helen, and Bruno, to please vote yes, protect your constituents on the moratorium.
Thank you.
Good morning, Supervisors. I'm Steve Zerker, and this is Melody, my wife. We live in Sterling Shores. Many decades ago, we used to manage 20 units in Belmont, a long time ago. So we're kind of right of center, generally. But this issue rises to an emergency. $350 increase. You are indeed going to see health and welfare affected by these mobile home owners. It's an issue. You're going to see some of them that can't afford it. That's what I have to say. Our home, I just got a revaluation on our mobile home by Redfin, and it's fallen 40% in 2 months. I guess somebody got word that there's pass-through fees and everything else, but it's actually dropped 40%. It may be just a glitch, I don't know, but something's going on and people are seeing handwriting on the wall.
They don't want to move to a park like that.
So anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Supervisors. Margot Kambara. Thank you, Supervisors Sabatier and Crandall, for your work on this ad hoc, for your work on the ad hoc committee, and thank you to the ad hoc committee members. The proposed moratorium is not perfect. As Supervisor Sabatier observes, the actions apply to all mobile home park owners, not just the bad apples, and that's unfortunate. But it does address an urgent situation. Residents need relief from predatory landlords in the mobile home parks, the mobile home park owners. And they've been asking, the residents have been asking for help for at least 18 months. And they face risks and risks of homelessness because their rent increases and the pass-through fees, they are hitting them hard because these residents, they are elderly, they are low income, some are disabled, and they are on fixed incomes. So our neighbors are asking for help. This proposed solution, the moratorium, as Supervisor Sabatier proposes, would be limited for 60 days with the intent not to renew. But that is not a solution unless the rent stabilization ordinance is ready to go 60 days after you pass this ordinance. Because our residents, they need help. They need protection. Ideally, it would be nice to provide a retroactive moratorium dating back to January 1st of this year, targeting the bad actors who are the mobile home park owners who are charging these predatory fees. So that is for your consideration. This proposed ordinance is a step forward to help protect our vulnerable neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Paula Bond, and I'm with Canocti Shores. And I urge the board to vote no on the emergency moratorium. Rather, do the work for the RSO than create this potentially unfair standard or precedence. I think you've been studying the circumstances, and while you've been studying, the environment has not changed. There's been a potential for the rent stabilization since the state started it. And the mobile home residency law through HCD also has venues to address rent increases and the frequency. So I don't think there's a justification for emergency. It's not a new issue. Mobile home park owners and mobile home parks have to compete with alternative housing options. There are natural market forces that will keep rents competitive. Too high, parks will have vacancies. They'll have issues with their residents, and they'll see the impact on their economic bottom line and be forced to change. Too low, and you'll see what's happened elsewhere in the county. Dilapidated parks with significant maintenance and deferred issues that, quite frankly, no one wants to live in. And we don't want to propagate that or have a negative impact on our community. The current situation is the status quo, but freezing rents is what changes it. A moratorium creates more uncertainty and puts investments and operational plans on the sideline and on hold. It will have a negative impact. The stated purpose of the moratorium is to freeze, and the freeze is to request to prevent the circumvention of the process so that the board can review in the future the RSO. But this moratorium declares it an emergency now, freezes rents in advance of that process. This moratorium itself circumvents the process. And while I appreciate the statement that you would put a limit on the dates, you'd still have the right to extend it as well as the pressure to continue the freeze. Again, circumventing the whole process of a joint discussion to develop solutions together. I do want to recognize all the residents in the room, and I know that we're all stakeholders in this, but we feel as park owners deeply wounded and concerned that we are being vilified in this process. Not all park owners are the same, and not all parks are the same. When we took over our park almost 10 years ago, we had so much deferred maintenance. And so yes, our rents are increasing. Over the past 7 years, our average increase has been less than 3% for the majority of our park, 5% for some. But that's because
That was
the
your
rent
timer.
started
I'm gonna have
so
to.
low.
I'm gonna have to ask you to stop.
So-
Thank you. Next person.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Salo, and I'm here on behalf of WMA and mobile home park owners and managers in Lake County. We come to you today with a deep concern about this agenda item and the work of the ad hoc committee. A rent freeze is a radical policy that should only be used in cases of emergencies, such as a natural disaster. There's simply no reason for this board to freeze rents. There are no high rent increases happening in Lake County right now or cases of residents receiving notices of high rent increases. There's simply no rent emergency here at all. In fact, the only emergency is the message that this county sends by continuing to discuss radical policies such as rent freezes and rent control. Leaders in Lake County are constantly discussing ways to attract more people and more commerce to this county. Sending such an anti-business and anti-housing signal such as this would do the direct opposite. Supervisor, as you stated, this rent control discussion has already been going on for over a year, and there haven't been any high rent increases in retaliation or in response. Actually, the only responses to this long discussion has been that of pulled investments. I know that you're well aware of investments that should be happening in this community right now that are not moving forward because of the existence of this discussion. Imagine how many other similar situations exist. When you voted to create this ad hoc committee to study this issue, I'm confident that fact-finding was one of your principal goals. So let's ask ourselves, has this ad hoc committee done any fact-finding? No. Zero. What data, what facts did the ad hoc committee use to arrive at this radical conclusion? Did they research historical rent data? No. Did they talk to the park owners and residents to hear both sides? No. I'm sorry, Supervisor Crandell, we had 0 meetings with you since the creation of this committee. It is simply not true. It's also not true that seniors are being abused or that there's any retaliation going on. Calling a nonprofit a bad actor? If a bad actor or nonprofit can't make it work in this county, what hope do any other housing providers have here? You're hearing unsubstantiated rumors, and that's why it was so important for the committee to do fact-finding, which they did not do. If they did, they would have found that increased rents in this county have been largely consistent with the rate of inflation. WMA works with mobile home park owners and managers throughout the entire state. We've had multiple meetings with ad hoc committees, and this is the first time that I've ever seen an ad hoc committee come back and report its findings without ever meeting with residents and park owners or doing any fact-finding at all. And now the committee wants to have these listening sessions, and in doing so, want to exclude most of the park owners by removing any option to participate remotely. It's completely unacceptable. It's time to put a stop to this. Lake County housing providers and residents need stability and predictability. WMA and park owners continue to be willing to participate in the process, but that's simply not what this ad hoc committee is looking towards. For the good of the county, its residents and businesses, we urge the board to put an immediate stop to this by dissolving the ad hoc committee and tabling any future discussion about rent control in Lake County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Gloria. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I do support the emergency ordinance. I don't want to talk about a lot of the things that the residents have already discussed. I would like to point out a few things more procedurally based on the discussion that I heard before public comment and also some of the public comments. First, I want to thank Mr. Crandall and Mr. Sabatier for working on this committee since about a year, and as has been pointed out, it's been going on for at least 2 years. So anyone who thinks that this was a surprise and that this was all of a sudden hasn't been paying attention. And I find it disappointing and concerning that that would be used as a pretext for trying to not support an emergency ordinance. The other thing is, as was mentioned by one of the supervisors, they have a lot of mobile home parks in the area. I think most of you all do. It is not Mr. Crandall's responsibility nor Mr. Sabatier's responsibility to knock on the door of every mobile home park, particularly the ones that are not in their district. If you are a supervisor, I would hope that if you thought this was a concern to some of your constituents, that you would have taken the time over the past year to reach out to them to encourage them to get involved. If they have failed to get involved, or you have failed to reach out to them to encourage them to get involved, then you can't use that as an excuse for not supporting the ordinance or supporting any ordinance. And I find it somewhat discouraging and but not surprising, unfortunately, that we have other ad hoc committees where people have been asking to participate and they've been told they can't participate. And then to flip that here to say, well, you know, they weren't involved, or Mr. Crandall, you should have go talk to the people in my district. That's not his job. If a supervisor's responsibility to talk to people in their district, then it's the supervisor of that district. I do appreciate Mr. Rasmussen's concern about the procedural and legal. I would have to defer to your counsel for more wisdom on that, and I want to thank you. I heard a lot of comments here about the actual ordinance itself, which is not in front of the board today. The 60-day time clock on that, I think, is prudent. And if more time is needed, as long as people are diligently working towards a solution, which, by the way, we have other ad hoc committees that haven't made an effort, but this clearly is not one of those. They've been working back and forth with legal to try to get to a solution. So please support this emergency ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, Elaine Brown. Two words were mentioned in this room, global and actors. And subsidizing is the key word here. There are people who used to subsidize situations like this. Case in point, you can get eggs at grocery outlet for $1.99. A year ago, everything was $10 everywhere, and in Lucky's and Santa Rosa's are $8.99. That's subsidizing. Someone is subsidizing for the poor. There's people who rule over these situations, and you have to think about the view. They're after your views. Those places are right on beautiful parts of the lake. They, the elites, want that land to build their homes on. So I'm saying to they, the elites, to step back and start subsidizing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roberta McIntyre, Hidden Valley Lake. I can empathize with the owners of these mobile homes. I used to be a mobile home owner and had to pay the increases, et cetera. And I can totally appreciate where your guys' heart is in terms of trying to do the best you can, actually for the last couple of years probably, trying to do what you can to help the residents of the mobile home parks. However, I think Chair Rasmussen hit the nail on the head earlier when he alluded to the fact that this ordinance you're trying to move forward is fundamentally flawed. It does not establish any findings of fact that establish that there's a clear health issue or a need for urgency here. Government code, well, actually, let me just state this real quick that I've written down. When Lake County implements a moratorium, such as a temporary freeze on land use, you're exercising police powers, which is a big use of your powers. And it relies on California Government Code sections 25-123, which County Council alluded to earlier, as well as 25-131 and 65-858 to execute those police powers. To justify a moratorium, the Lake County Board of Supervisors must explicitly find a current immediate threat to public peace, health, or safety. I hear it. I know it exists. You all know it exists. But how come you haven't been able to articulate that in writing for the last couple of years? The moratorium cannot move forward until those findings of facts are built into the ordinance. Furthermore, just for clarification, and maybe through the chair at County Council can correct me if I'm wrong, the moratorium cannot be retroactive. The moratorium will have a lifespan of 45 days, at which point it has to be brought forward for a continuation. So those are my thoughts. I can empathize with what you're trying to do. You're trying to do the right thing, which I totally adore, but you're doing it the wrong way, and you're opening yourself up to a lot of contests later with legal remedies from from park owners, et cetera, that will challenge this. Thank you for the time, and please make the right choice and do the right thing. And really, you guys, I can totally empathize with everything, but I don't want them to do it the wrong way and end up in
Reminder
trouble
to
legally.
speak to us. Thank you, I appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the room? Want to be sure? Yes. You'll need to come to the mic. Yeah. Okay. We'll see if we can bring you a mic.
I'm sorry.
Well, do we have a microphone?
Yeah, I could hobble up there, but I'm sorry. It happens. I'm Barbara Armadino from Sterling Shores. There's been a lot of talk about the pass-through fees, but the amount
was not mentioned. In January of this year, we were served with notice to pay $485,000 divided by 67 residents over the next 10 years. Yes, 10 years. That's horrible. I'm sorry, to me, that's elder abuse. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room? Go ahead and state your name, sir.
John Martin, Clear Lake Oaks. You really need to pass this, because us people on fixed incomes, we're getting hit left and right with all these hikes all around. Our water company's raising the water that you can't even drink the water. So, it doesn't make sense. We need some kind of control over the greed that is happening throughout the world. So I support what you guys are doing, and I hope you pass this, and thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room before I move online? How many do? Okay. All right, go ahead with the first one. Matt Davies, state your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. Go ahead.
Am I supposed to be seen? I don't
No,
see.
no, just speak.
Okay. Matt Davies with Meadow Point. I want to point out a few things. State law requires 90 days notice of a rent increase. You're doing a moratorium for 60 days. Is there one rent increase that the board is aware of that they're trying to blunt? Is there any rent increase notice out there that would be stopped because of this? The answer is no. What's the point of this 60-day pause when there's no rent increase even on the table that you're trying to stop? Sterling Shores, $500,000 for a seawall. What? If Salo said it beautifully, if a nonprofit can't stay in business, how is a private citizen going to do business in your county? What are you expecting from Sterling Shores and Caritas? Do you want the park to move out of business, or are you looking for it to be able to stay in business? And if it's working at a nonprofit level, where's the hidden incentive there? I want to point out too, you do get a lot of information. Let's talk about my tenant, Sarah Long, who came in. She talks about not being able to sell her home. Well, let's talk about facts on this one. She's got a 1994 single wide she's trying to sell for $70,000. A brand new single wide today costs less than that. When you're trying to sell something for more than it's worth, of course it's not going to sell. That coming in and saying, hey, I can't sell this, it's the landlord's fault, is beyond disingenuous. I have made it clear for the last year that we are here ready to meet. I've had to email Supervisor Crandell, I don't know, half a dozen times, sometimes before I get a response. I've had one phone call with them. We're talking about sitting down and meeting with the ad hoc committee. I don't know how many times park owners have said, hey, we're here, we're ready to meet. Let's talk facts. Let's talk real facts about where the rents are. Nobody's reached out to us. That does not make for a fair conversation. Our water project, yes, we put it on hold. We're supposed to be the general contractor. We're supposed to potentially put ourselves on the hook for millions of dollars. We're not doing anything because we don't know we don't have any safety net, and you're taking the only thing away from us that could matter by passing this moratorium and then an ordinance. We need to sit down and talk if this Upper Lake Water Project is going to go through, because we don't know what to do. We are scared. Scared. We raise rents once a year. Last year was effectively $40. We're not gouging. I'd like to see one. I'd like to know what park is gouging. I'd like you folks to have the numbers. I'd like to see a rental
That's
table.
the 3 minutes, Matt. I'm going to have to cut you off. Next person. Andy, go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Supervisors. I'm Andy Carey, President of Monolith Properties, where we operate 3 mobile home parks in the county. and I do not believe there is cause for emergency moratorium. Moratoria are for emergencies. There's no widespread natural disaster, no declared emergency by the president or the governor. And calling it such starts to sound more like the politics of the 415 area code rather than the 707. The law already provides protections for each of the alleged urgent matters we've heard today. The Mobile Home Residency Law Protection Plan, the MRLPP, already provides no cost protections and legal representation for residents who believe they've been wronged. The district attorney can take action on behalf of the residents if they believe a park owner has been harming homeowners with unfair business practices. If this moratorium is intended to last for 60 days, the MRL already requires 90-day notice for rent increases. So 60 days, even 90 days, is an unnecessary period for such a moratorium. If the cost of living is considered an emergency in the county, will this board also freeze grocery costs, freeze property taxes and utility inflation, and other equally impactful costs on homeowners? And lastly, if we consider these discussions about rent control, let alone this moratorium, what message would this board be sending to housing providers and other small business interests who consider where to invest their capital? The Bay Area and Sonoma County and Humboldt County have all waved off those small business interests who would help such areas grow. Does Lake County want to follow their big government path or blaze its own independent path? Please vote against this moratorium. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Guest, state your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Board. Angela Amaral. I'm going to be speaking wearing a couple different hats today as the owner of a mobile home in a park, even though this will not affect me because my mobile home is in an incorporated city. I am in full support. It is happening in our park as well. Hopefully the incorporated cities take a hard look at what is going on in their areas too. This issue was brought to the East Region Town Hall back in 2024 by Orchard Shore residents. Supervisor Crandall tried to get an ordinance passed, which your board denied, and he has been diligently trying since then to help some of our most vulnerable residents. And I want to thank Supervisor Crandall for listening and doing his best to assist. If you research some of the park owner investment websites for their investors, it is clear that this is absolutely a predatory practice only meant to line investor pockets, not increase the quality of living for those in the park. They are taking advantage of a situation where people's options are very limited. They cannot simply move their mobile homes to somewhere else. Supervisor Piskis says that mobile home parks in her area have not brought concerns to her, but has she reached out to the mobile home residents herself? Are they aware of how to bring their concerns forward? As to the legal concerns mentioned by Supervisor Rasmussen, I ask, have other areas that have implemented similar moratoriums faced any legal challenges? The threat to health, public safety, and well-being, our most vulnerable residents in our community that would be affected would say that this is a threat to their well-being and ability to retain affordable housing. This moratorium is necessary since your board is aware that residents are being threatened with increases in anticipation of an RS, with some already being implemented, such as a $350 increase in one mobile home park that is then being credited back so that it doesn't look like an increase. Please protect our most vulnerable residents and pass this temporary moratorium to allow residents to feel safe in their homes while your board works on a permanent RSO. There would probably be more residents present. As you know, retaliation is a real fear, and I think that's why you don't have more people speaking up. Thank you.
Thank you. Next name. Lisa Marie, go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Lisa Marie Benavides. I sit on the Western Region Town Hall as a representative for Upper Lake, and I also want to thank Supervisor Crandall and Sabatier for putting this on the agenda and for the work that they've done for the last couple of years to try and get a resolution here. I don't pretend to be an expert. I don't know what the exact right solution is, but doing nothing is not an option, in my opinion. Retaliation has occurred simply from it being on a agenda item. An email went out that the park closure might occur. We saw retaliation earlier today when a resident speaks up and then the owner of the park specifically calls them out by name and gives the details about them. The same thing happened at the town hall when Meadow Point came to the Western Region Town Hall, and the owner of the park was there, and every single person that spoke up, their lot number was pulled and their details were discussed, and they were teared down in the public for simply speaking out at a town hall meeting. So I do strongly believe that a moratorium is needed because there are predatory practices and there is retaliation happening. And I do believe that the purpose of our government is to protect our people, and our people are not being protected right now. I understand we have to have business and we do have to find a way to work with the park owners. But what do you do when a park owner's response is, I'm just going to take my ball and go home. I refuse to engage with you unless you do exactly what I say. And we have in writing that the reason why some of these pass-through costs have come is because of, quote, a draconian rental stabilization ordinance is on the table. So it is our responsibility until we find a long-term solution to have a short-term solution that protects the people that live here, that work here, that spend their money here, and that have been here for generations. Some of the people that are in these homes have been there for generations and have nowhere else to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Next name? David Barry, go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Good morning, Lake County Board Supervisors and staff. My name is David Barry. I am an associate manager with GSMOL, Golden State Manufactured Homeowners League. And I'm speaking on behalf of myself and our Area A1 Vice President, Jody Johnson, who was unable to attend. We represent Northwestern California counties from Santa Clara all the way to the Oregon border, representing mobile home owners. And as a mobile home resident and GSMOL zone vice president, we've experienced uncontrolled ground rent increases and large investment groups using the imbalance of wealth and power to demand submission. Your vulnerable Lake County senior residents, your disabled veteran residents, and vulnerable families purchase the mobile home unsubsidized, and they merely rent the land. The norm from large investment group park owners, many of whom are not your constituents, is to weaponize the word closure, weaponize rent stabilization, or both if a county deems it necessary to defend, enforce, and strengthen protections for mobile home park residents. The mental health toll this takes is substantial. A moratorium studies the potential, while each of you thoughtfully considers an RSO, closing loopholes while always supplying a method for park owners to show they deserve more than the allowable annual increase. Moratoriums have been enacted in many California cities just this year, Windsor, Santa Barbara, Cotati being examples, because taking the chance that large increases could drive these residents to the streets was not a chance most sitting boards of supervisors or council members could take. Listening sessions with stakeholders is, of course, a necessary step for the implementation of an RSO. And you are taking that step now, not later. During this process, we have already heard in your public forum that if protections are voted in, then this weaponization would begin. We have even seen increases that were not warranted, but still showing as a subsidized increase when there is no increase. It scares residents, and it would scare anybody. The word radical is thrown around, but really RSOs in 104 jurisdictions right now are not radical. They're protective of the last bastion of unsubsidized affordable housing that there is. Your effort is commendable, protecting your most vulnerable constituents. We look forward to speaking to better drafted ordinances, common loopholes, and necessary enforcement when you return with an RSO. I thank you for seeing that your mobile home park residents are not residents of wealth, but they are residents of value. Thank you.
Thank you. The next name? No more hands? Okay. All right, then I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the board. Did you?
Yeah, can I?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to address a couple of things. I know that Mr. Davies had mentioned a phone call and meetings, and he had actually been notified, and I'm pretty sure he and Mr. Londano were in the Zoom meeting. I don't know if Zoom counts as a meeting, because I know that's how we've met as the ad hoc for the past year and a half. I don't think we met in person once. So if Zoom isn't a meeting, then I guess we never met as an ad hoc as well. So I know I've had a phone call with you, and I've had a phone call with Matt, an extensive one, and he even knew to go to the town hall because I asked him to go and talk with the people, which he said, I'm going to have a good conversation with them and try to be, at least meet them in the middle. Well, instead, one of our town council members explained what happened at that meeting, and everybody that was there, I wasn't at that meeting myself because I was at another meeting out of town, had told me that they felt disrespected, they felt like there was no reason to even have the meeting. And so each time that I've talked with either of them or any of them, it's never ever been about trying to meet halfway. It's either my way or the highway. It's either what I want or I'm gonna blame. For example, when we met with in Clear Lake Oaks and Lake Village Estates, Boa Vita came to that meeting. They came right away because we had the meeting, and they tried to work and tried to be polite and whatnot, and then at the end of the meeting, they blamed the county. They said that if the county didn't put taxes on us, we wouldn't have to raise the rent or raise anything. And I asked them solely, like, if you just bought the park, why didn't you come and talk to the county about your taxes in general? You could have come to the assessor meeting and made some sort of appeal or something of the like, and I don't know, they didn't come to me about anything. They just decided, hey, so they're, on one hand, they want to blame for due diligence not being done, but on the other hand, want to just make, moves without doing anything themselves. So it's frustrating for me, but at the same time, I can get on board with some of the things that they want, and that's why we're having these other meetings and not just pushing the ordinance. I know I did. I did because I didn't know what else to do. I wanted to make sure that someone's attention got, someone was getting their attention. This is why I brought it forward a couple years back, and with the help of county council, because we basically mirrored it after Humboldt, but then tweaked it to be more of a fit for Lake County. So, it wasn't done perfectly, but something had to be done. There's nothing that Lake County had in place. Other places have had it. We're at where we're at. I don't know if it doesn't look like we may have enough support to do that today. Maybe we wait a week. Either way, we still have to try to do something, whether it be one or the other, or we meet in the middle somehow, but we have to figure something out. And I think these next two town halls that are coming up are going to be beneficial. I hope that the folks do come. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to listen to the park owners. I'm not just completely against you guys. I hope you don't feel that way. I just feel like something has to be done to help the folks that are suffering from this. So I don't know. I just wanted to say that because I know that they said that I didn't have meetings or talk with them or anything like that. I know the discussion that I had with Mr. Davies was very, I guess, controversial. We couldn't see eye to eye. We ended up having a good finishing conversation, but we have differences of views, and I think we just agree to disagree. So I'll just leave it there.
All right, at this point, before we go into full deliberations, I need to call a 5-minute break, and we'll start back up. All right, I'm going to call our meeting back to order, and Supervisor Owen, what was that? Supervisor Owen had her pen up, so she's going to be first.
As we have heard from our attorney, Mr. Guanaveno, it looks, I know that some of you came up and questioned the legalities of this, and we up here need to follow the advice of our county attorney. And he has stated to us and clarified that this is legal. And that, so with that in mind, I think that in my mind, I believe that we have the absolute legal right to go ahead and adopt this. And I think because of a few of the predatory charges that have been coming forward, I really think that we need to step in it and put in this ordinance. Thank you.
Supervisor Sabatier.
So I guess I'll start again where I started earlier. There are some mobile home parks that are doing it right. And I feel like some of those folks are being put on their heels and having to play defense. And I apologize, we can't make laws that pinpoint specific who. But we can make laws so that what you're doing right continues and what others are doing wrong can be changed to ensure that the livelihood of folks don't get adversely impacted by ways that they shouldn't be. I'll stop from saying the next comment I was planning to make. There's not a parity in housing laws for how rent increase occurs. And that is a problem in the sense that mobile home parks are treated in a very different way in how rent, other fees, because you can increase other fees and you can say my rent only went up this much, but the other stuff went up this other amount and it's completely separate. And so I guess I will go back to my last comment. If it's radical to want to ensure that we have people that can afford to continue to live in the place they call home, I just don't see how that's radical. And I think it's very hyperbole to use those types of words, just like some of the emails that we've received. This is, and I'm not moving from wanting to add the 60 days. And I make a promise right here. I'm not going to extend it further than 60 days. Our job is to bring back what we've been working on. And if it doesn't pass, then I don't know what the answer is. But I don't want to make it go further than that because there is a certain level of respect towards the business of running and managing an operation that 60 days shouldn't be horrible. I understand why you don't want it, but I also don't want to go further than that. And I think we need to have that discussion on how do we bring mobile home parks closer to the parity of what single-family dwellings get to follow in the rent control of the state of California. The reason that it is that way is because it's mobile, which is a kind of a farce in a way. Because to move a mobile home costs an enormous amount of people that those who live in mobile home parks do not have the means to do. And so we have to find a middle ground, and hyperbole language is not useful. And I think 60 days is not a nuclear bomb, and I think that it is an appropriate use in our pursuit to look at an ordinance to say, let's pause so it doesn't get worse, and we'll be back before 60 days. So I'm ready to move forward. And I appreciate all of the comments that we heard, and I don't mean to say this, I appreciate the mobile home park owners for your courage to come here and to kind of have to face the odds, I guess, of who's in our chamber today. because your voices matter, because if you aren't able to operate, then we have to deal with these folks in a vastly different way that I don't want to have to deal with. And so we have to find that middle ground. I'm looking forward to our meetings. I joined the ad hoc committee with an absolute no in my mind that this is not the way forward. I have learned a lot, and I think that there is a good way to move forward where mobile home parks can continue to make money, mobile home parks can continue to operate, and we can ensure that there's a little bit better parity between those who have more, who get to live in a single-family dwelling, versus those who have less, who unfortunately have little options left, and sometimes, and it's by choice at times, but sometimes what's left is a mobile home park. And to not have those parities bothers me at my core, because a house is a house, and a house is a house, however you want to call it. And so that is what I'm aiming for, and that is my intentions behind our action. And yeah, I'm done.
Chair, go ahead.
Well, I appreciate everyone coming, and some of you have been coming all year. This is an important issue. We do have to work towards correcting predatory actions, but it's more than just some of our park owners that are doing the right thing. It's the majority. And our, I think my comments were a little misconstrued or misheard earlier. I have park owners in my district that have been wanting to be part of this conversation, and I have forwarded their contacts to staff, and they haven't had the opportunity. And I have a real issue with that, because it has been a year, and these are really valuable members of our community, stakeholders, and can really help us get through this. The issue I have today is that I just cannot see how we meet the urgency threshold. And it was stated that it's because it's taken too long to do the work, and that is not a justification. We need findings that show data, and we've heard a lot of stories, and this is a hard issue to hear. These are hard stories to hear, but I've never once seen the numbers. And I can't vote on an urgency ordinance if I don't have those findings and that data to back it up. So I hope that there's a lot of good work that comes out of the listening sessions, and I hope that today didn't backtrack some of that collaboration that can happen, because I think it's really, it's worth doing, and I think that there's a lot of value there. But when I see this in the recitals, that the Board of Supervisors has received public testimony and information indicating that due to the ad hoc committee being established, that rent is going to be increased prior to an RSO coming back to the Board of Supervisors for consideration. Yes, we've had public comment. We have not had testimony, and I don't see any of that data. And that's what's really hard for me.
Okay, it's in front of the supervisors for deliberation right now, so if you could please. Go ahead, Supervisor Crandall.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that with these next two town hall meetings, microphone is off. Sorry. I'm hoping, I'm really optimistic about these next two meetings, and I'm hoping that some of the folks you're speaking of come to these to problem solve. There are a few characters that just don't do that, but that's okay. Let's try and see where we can go with those before the rent stabilization ordinance comes back, and meet halfway or meet somewhere, do something at least. But it is unfortunate that some of them haven't had the opportunity to come forward or weren't involved in the conversation or whatever the case may be. But the ones that were did say that they were going to try and do some things to help the situation, but obviously they have not. So that's kind of what made it more of a situation. And I do hope that this doesn't divide even, like how you're saying. I hope it doesn't do that. I think we can come to something and willing to do so when it comes to these next couple of meetings.
Right. So if there's nothing else, then I'll start with mine. I just want to state, first of all, I do appreciate the work of our supervisors. They've been working hard. I appreciate the community input. There was a lot of messages yesterday, which I read all of them from both sides. And in fact, I've been communicating with people from both sides over the past 12 months. But it's a little frustrating for me, mostly because of the Brown Act laws in the state of California that don't allow me to communicate with my fellow supervisors until it gets to a public meeting. That's the law, that's the way it is, I have to follow it, but I am allowed to say that it's a bit frustrating and makes it hard for us to effectively do our job. But having said that, again, I appreciate their work. My comments, again, I'm going to go over a couple other things, are purely focused on the laws and procedures. None of what I say means that I'm against protecting seniors or veterans or anyone else. I'm fully committed to that, but I'm also committed to fully vetting everything out and looking at all sides of an issue. Because again, I have to represent everybody and then make a decision on how to do the right thing. I don't feel like I have enough information right now. I was hoping that we would have the RSO in front of us more vetted out to be able to see, a lot of these questions that I have might be answered there. But nobody has answered my question about what county department, there's provisions in here that state violations of the law. What county department is going to administer and enforce that? Do we have an answer today?
I thought I responded to that.
Yeah, what
That-
county department?
At this moment in time in our RSO, which will be discussed and eventually brought back, that it goes back to the date that we do the moratorium to check who increased their fees and what penalties will occur if they did under the moratorium.
Okay, I apologize for that. So then we wouldn't enforce it until that point.
And at this moment in time, based on the committee, we would be aiming for getting a contractor and doing an RFP so that it is not specific. Yes, there will be the need for a point person in our staff to be able to coordinate with the contractor, but it would be a contractor if it was approved as it is envisioned currently, and granted, it's still not in a final draft mode, but that is our anticipation.
So that RFP would come back to us at the time of the RSO or before?
Well, first we would need to approve the RSO to even move with the RFP, because I don't want to waste anybody's time if we're not going to go through with the RSO.
Okay.
And we didn't want to burden any staff with, I know we talked about that before, we don't want to burden staff or put more on, any other department's plate for that matter. That's why we wanted to do a RFP and look at some other.
And this was discussed as well with county council as far as the ability to put the penalties, not to put the penalties within the ordinance itself for the moratorium, but to use our contractor in the future to go backwards as of August 11th and see if anybody breached the moratorium.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Go ahead,
on this
please.
point? Yeah, since we're on this point, so this is a standalone ordinance with no certainty of the, I have not seen the RSO. I don't know if that's going to pass. And so here we are, we're passing something where we don't know today how it will be enforced.
Of course.
And that's the uncertainty that I was talking about earlier. And
I mean, in my opinion, if there's no RSO, then whatever happened at this point, maybe Mr. Guintovano can
Go
help
ahead.
with the response.
County Council?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So what's before your board today is just the urgency ordinance. RSO is still being worked on with subsequent meetings. So those terms that have been outlined for your board today as it relates to the RSO may be subject to change. It's still being reviewed by staff, further discussions to be made depending on what comes out of those meetings. As for the urgency ordinance, which is again what's before your board today, I believe the question mainly relates to the enforcement part of it. Enforcement part just primarily would come from the County of Lake, and that's before your board. There are violation provisions. outlined in the urgency ordinance itself. It's under section 4. So as it relates to the enforcement part of that, as to who would enforce these infraction fines that's been referenced under section 4 in the urgency ordinance, because there isn't any specific designation or delegation of a department who would enforce this, then that would, default back to your board. The County of Lake, in terms of enforcement, board can then take that up at a certain point in time for direction to staff on how to enforce these fines, should they be enforced. That's how it stands right now. Now, alternatively, this is at its heart still an ordinance before your board. I've already, I believe Supervisor Sabatier technically has proposed a 60-day limit. That speaks to section 3 here. And so the ordinance itself would have to be amended based on that, because currently as it's presented to your board, those portions are blank. So, and then I presented an amendment by adding that recital earlier on. And that just goes to show to your board that if your board is willing to consider any further amendments to this ordinance, that can certainly take place as well, as it relates to enforcement, delegation to a specific department, any sort of procedural mechanisms that would need to be built in. That would be up to your board, and the ordinance would just have to be offered. This ordinance would have to be offered as amended, as a matter of procedure.
Thank you, and I appreciate the clarification. I recall you do say that now, but I wasn't fully taking that in at the time. But and I am fully confident in our county counsel and his legal advice to us, but that doesn't mean a challenge wouldn't be filed tomorrow, and we're in court to try to defend it. And with the limited information I have, I'm not comfortable passing this today. So we're...
Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer the resolution as, or I guess it's an ordinance. I don't offer, help me out. I just want to get it on record.
So it would be still a two-part, with this being an ordinance procedurally, it would be, there would be two motions. The first motion would be a first reading of the ordinance. And so if your board is ready, I could walk through the language for that. Okay, so the motion would be a motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance to be read in title only as amended with the amendments stated, and I could walk through the board with that. To address the as amended part, the first amendment would be to add that as a last recital to that, to this urgency ordinance, the language, therefore, in quotes, therefore, the Board of Supervisors determines that this ordinance is urgently needed for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and welfare pursuant to Government Code Section 25123. And so that would be the First Amendment. The Second Amendment would be in relation to Section 3, where instead of the blank portions that's referenced there, it would state, the first blank portion would be, I'll just use the phrase, from and including August 11, 2026, through and including October 10, 2026, to reflect that 60-day period. So those would be the amendments under that motion language as amended.
Second.
Just real quick, so I make the motion. Did you say first reading in the motion?
Yes.
Yes, that would be.
But that wouldn't make sense if it's an urgency moratorium. That's why it requires 4/5, because it doesn't get a second reading. It's either today or not, right?
And in the past, we've done the first reading and the offer of the ordinance on that same day. So with your board's passing of the first reading of the ordinance, clerk reads the urgency ordinance in title only. That was part of the motion as the ordinance first reading as amended. And then if that passes, then your board can then move on to just offer the ordinance as amended.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification. So I make that motion.
So I have a motion.
And a second?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay. That fails with a 3-2. So that would be no further action at this point. So that's going to conclude that item at this point. And we will move on.
Real quick.
What was that?
Just real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
The reading has to have a 4/5 vote as well, or just the ordinance?
I believe that's part of the requirement of the government code. Now, your board can, for purposes of procedure, can still make a motion, still on this item, to offer the ordinance as amended with the amendment stated, just to, as a housekeeping matter procedurally, and then take that roll call vote. But as it stands, yes, under the government code, going to your question, the approval process of the ordinance, with this being an urgency ordinance, it states it needs a 4/5 vote in order to move forward.
Okay, because what I'm thinking is, just hypothetically, is, let's say if that didn't pass, that just means it doesn't read in title only first, or did I miss something? Or?
Just, it doesn't pass the first reading requirement that's required under the government code.
Okay.
Because the government code, don't have the section off the top of my head, would otherwise require the ordinance to be read in full unless there's a motion for that first reading to be read in title only. So again, your board may still make a motion to offer the ordinance to be second and then take that roll call vote.
As far as I'm concerned, it failed already, so I'm good. I just wanted to put it on record is all.
Right, any further? Okay. All right, so we'll conclude that and move on to our 6.5 10 a.m. item, which is consideration of presentation of community development, code division grant and programs update. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Director.
Thank you, Mireya Turner, Community Development Director. We will just pull up our PowerPoint, but we are super excited to bring some, well, I guess we could call it crowing, about some accomplishments that have really made a difference in our communities. As all supervisors know, illegal dumping is a chronic issue in many parts of our county, and so our staff has been hard at work to secure grants to remove a significant amount of this illegal dumping. Our presentation will be led by Deputy Administrator Shannon Walker-Smith. We also have the Code Enforcement Manager, Marcus Beltramo, and Code Enforcement Officer, or are you a Program Coordinator? Program Coordinator, Christopher Colin. And I will turn the microphone over.
Still morning. Good morning, Board. Thank you for the opportunity to present some good news today. It was about a year ago that we made a presentation on where we were with the illegal dumping program as we were about the mid-year point. And so we have some additional updates for you today. As you know, our Code Enforcement Division has grown significantly over the last couple years, and that's mostly due to specific grants and programs that we have been able to organize. And now Code has different sets of officers that are working on very specific objectives, and I feel like that is something that has helped us move a lot of our desires to address some of the problems in this, challenges in this county down the line. We've come a long way in our ability to identify certain kinds of cases and then suit them with the right officer team. And it's been really exciting. We're just reporting on some of the programs today. Specifically, we are not including our Cohort 3 cannabis enforcement grant, but be happy to bring back a presentation on that at some other time. We wanted to talk about a few of the grants that are wrapping up and partway through their cycle. So the first one is the illegal dumping program, and as I said, about a year ago we were presenting on the successes we had with our free dump days that we held last summer. This grant began in '24, and we had $250,000, mostly for abatements in this grant. Different grants come with different kinds of funding for our division. So we completed this grant in June of '26, just a few months ago. We held 6 free dump days, and we also cleaned up 29 illegal dumping sites in the county and 2 very large private property abatements. I thought it was significant to state that 16 out of the 29 illegal dumping locations were self-abated by property owners after noticing. So we're having quite a lot of success with self-abatement, and really glad that we can come together with the community in a lot of cases and work with them to get things done. So here are some of the stats from that grant, which I think are astounding. I have stated the trash and metal in both tons and pounds, so it's not a combination of those two, but just for everyone to see what we were able to accomplish. We were able to collect 872 tons of trash and metal from the community, or nearly 2 million pounds. So it's very significant what we were able to do with just $250,000 of grant funding. We're very fortunate to have had that Cal Recycle grant. 923 tires, as you can see, the propane tanks, mattresses, and vehicles all abated with those grant funds. And a couple of photos. Here's the kind of now infamous illegal dumping site on Mountain View Road. A couple of photos of the cleanup there. Did a private property abatement out on Dry Creek. We discussed this one a few weeks ago because we brought the lien to you a couple of weeks ago, but this was a very significant cleanup at the base of an old mine in Middletown, and I'm not going to read that, but the stats are there from that abatement in particular. Here's some photos from that. Oh, back. Shoot, sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, so here are some of the photos from that. And then we did another very large abatement on Lakeshore Drive. Also, we have brought this to you previously. And here are some of the photos from that. This great drone photo of all that was on this property. And then now we have been able to clean it back to bare land. And as a result, kind of as we're wrapping up that grant program, a couple of things. We are adding some language into Chapter 13. We're drafting an illegal dumping ordinance that would give us some additional tools to hold dumpers responsible. And so that will come to your board. We had some prevention money involved with this grant and had the intention to use that for installing gates and cameras and things. But we were we never were able to gain the legal authority as code enforcement to proceed. And so now those monies were just redistributed to those last couple of large abatements. Staff time was partially covered by this grant. There was not a lot of staff funding allocated through this grant, but we may be able to recover some additional funds through the lien process, which all of the properties that we abated through this process either have already gone to lien or are still to come. And we plan to pursue additional Cal Recycle grants as they become available. We applied for one that was some extra funding and didn't get it, but just even since we submitted this presentation, a new round of funding is available. So we will be applying shortly for a new Cal Recycle grant, so we continue this great work helping to clean up in places where often the property owner is not able or not available to do so. So that's the illegal dumping program. Wanted to give you guys an update on the Copter program, which of course is a board-supported program funded by cannabis funds. We are in our 3rd year of that funding, if you can believe it. Time flies. Seems like we were just getting the budget for that program and such together. So last year of dedicated funding for that program. It's been in operation also since 24-25, and just some of the stats so far on that program, we have opened 543 cases over 2 years. Again, this program is a really community-oriented program that is on the North Shore, mostly focused on Nice, Lucerne, and Clear Lake Oaks, and it's currently funding one of our program coordinators and one of our officers, so they're kind of a two-man team on that side of the lake. And they've done they're doing community-oriented code enforcement where they're really working with the community and talking with neighbors and trying to really make a difference. So 543 cases opened in 2 years. We've closed 308 cases, performed 24 abatements, posted many, many red tags. One of the things, our observation as we've come to the end of year 2 and kind of reflected on some of the roadblocks that we have encountered on cases in that area, is that a lot of the cases that we have in that area, the ones that are complex and we've had a challenging time with, are rooted in social nuisances. And our current code just doesn't address social nuisances, and so we are working to add some language to Chapter 13 as well, to look at what our options would be for addressing those kinds of problems that often we get roadblocked on.
Yeah, can you just define what you're considering as social nuisance?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's not exactly encampments, but when folks are congregating on a property and the property owner isn't maybe alive, and it's very difficult to figure out who's in charge of this property, and we can post red tags, we can do a variety of things, but we're ultimately not really able to resolve the problem with our current tools that we have in our toolbox that our county code allows for.
Seen some of those.
Yes, we've seen many of those. I'd be happy to let Marcus chime in on this as well.
Okay, if you wish, I'll check in with you. Do you want?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Just give him a minute to say a little bit more about that.
Marcus Beltramo, manager of the Code Enforcement Division. So social nuisances are not just conditions of a property. Nuisances can also be behaviors. A lot of times when a nuisance affects the comfortable enjoyment of a property, that could be a social nuisance. So loud music, loud noise, driving erratically through on the property, those things that disturb the enjoyable, comfortable piece of a person's property while they're on in their home, that would be a social nuisance. Now, it wouldn't just be there's a social nuisance and we would do it. It would be after a property's been noticed for violations for property conditions. If we deem if there's a reasonable determination that the social nuisances or the behavior of the people on the property are contributors to the problems or the disruption in the neighborhood, then we would have the ability to issue a social nuisance for that property. Social nuisances are very common, but what we've found in code enforcement is that we become, you find out about human behavior. And the code does not address the human behavior that is causing disruptions and some of the health and safety issues to our communities. So this is just something that we're exploring and something that's come to our attention.
Okay, Supervisor Sabatier.
I hope this is taken well. I'm a little concerned. Number one, the title, the name, social nuisances, like I fear what that encompasses. It should just be code violations. If there's no code violation, we can't say your behavior is wrong. What rule and who is the one to say that the behavior is right or wrong? So I'm concerned where that's going. I hope we can change the title from social nuisance to something more related to a code violation, which is what we should be doing. So I don't know, this conversation makes me uncomfortable without better understanding what the guardrails are of that conversation, because I don't like how you're behaving, like call behavioral health to ask for help. I think we're outside of the realm of code enforcement, so
We'd be happy to clarify.
And here's the thing, we didn't come here to expand on this. This is something that we are gonna vet out. We're gonna be very careful in our approach, but a social nuisance is a nuisance. It is a code violation. The code will be very specific and have detail in it. It will not be general or ambiguous or vague. I understand your concerns, and we also understand when those behavioral issues are behavioral health or mental health issues that need to be addressed by experts. Social nuisances are common. They're some commonplace in California. It's something that we will vet out. It's something that will come from the board. There will be public discussion, and we will need to craft this so it is palatable and proper.
Do you have a question, Supervisor?
Yes, I do. Wouldn't that be come under the purview of the sheriff's department?
So yes, some nuisances. So nuisances can be enforced from a criminal perspective just as well as a administrative perspective. So nuisances can also be adjusted from a civil perspective as well. Code enforcement right now addresses it from an administrative perspective. The sheriff can address it from a criminal. The legal system should address it from the civil point of view. But what you're gonna find out is the sheriff's office may not have the manpower and the staffing to address these things. These issues happen to be germane to the conditions of these problem health and safety properties. And Hudson, 6722 Hudson would be our prime example of a social nuisance that could have been prevented before what happened occurred on that property. There is more to come on this, and we need to have deeper discussions on this. I think the concerns are justified, but I think to address the issues that we're dealing with, you have to address the behavior on these properties. And we have people that not are always property owners, that are not always occupants, that are causing these problems. And you have to ask the people in the community, is it fair to them? Barrel would be another example of a social nuisance, where we were not able to address it because we didn't have the proper tools. I don't want this conversation to cloud this presentation, but these are real things, and we're really trying to address these issues because they are affecting our communities. And we can go into deeper examples when we get deeper into this conversation and present this ordinance. But I appreciate the concern, and I appreciate your involvement as we get deeper into this so that we can make sure that it is crafted in a way that is right for our communities.
I just have one more quick little comment. What I'm concerned about is if this is outside the realm of your authority.
If we could table this portion of the discussion, the board will have ample time to review the draft ordinance when it comes and express any questions and concerns about social nuisances as they are illustrated in that ordinance at that time.
Okay, were you wanting to say something else about that?
I don't want to say don't table it because we don't have the details, but at the same time, your clarification has not, like, to me, behavior changes if we do our part, which is the code enforcement part. And if well, you're telling me no, but we shouldn't.
You're only hearing this the first time.
Let's finish.
You need to get.
No, I think there is a very legitimate fear of where it is we're going, and I hope that we can take a look at how it is we intend to do this, because right now I am highly concerned.
And we will, when we come forth
let's finish the presentation, and then we can swing back around. Thank you.
Okay, back to Copter. So a couple of examples of work that we have done on Copter. Butte Street is a good example of a collaboration between our Copter officers and our hazardous vegetation officer. Butte Street is on the very edge of the community growth boundary in Nice and has a lot of potential to bring fire into the neighborhood should something start outside that community growth boundary. So we opened 36 cases on this one street, some of them traditional nuisance abatement cases and many of them has-veg, and our officers work together to resolve a lot of issues on that street and make it much more fire safe headed into the fire season here. A couple of other Copter abatements, some photos, one on Schindler in Clear Lake Oaks, one on First Street in Lucerne, and a couple, one on Crump Street in Nice and another on Oak Grove in Clear Lake Oaks. Another one here with a drone picture. You can see kind of the scope of some of these projects that we've been working on. And then there were a lot of successful self-abatements in Copter as well, and we always want to recognize when the community is really working with us, and it happens about half of the time we get a good response from the community. So this was over here to the left was a property right on Highway 20, where all of this debris had been sitting for many, many years. That's cleaned up now. The far right was a really hazardous, unpermitted construction project that we worked on. A couple of other just things that we wanted to bring up about Copter. One of the things that has been an observation in the Copter area is that there are at least 8 fire-destroyed units that need to be demolished in that area. Many of them are old mobiles that we suspect contain asbestos, and the cost for the testing of that and then a demolition with the appropriate contractor is about $50,000. So we get a lot of questions about why burned up units are still sitting in the community, and we would love it if we could address all of those right away. We know it's it's a health hazard, but we will need to discuss a allocation of funds either from a grant or some other source in order to address those. And so just wanted to bring that to your board's attention, that that's what's preventing us from moving forward on those fire destroyed units in the Copter area. And then here's just some photos of all those fire destroyed units that need to be demolished that are sitting in the community. And we realize that, the community's not terribly happy about that, and we would love to address it and wanted to bring that to your board's attention. Copter funding is set to sunset at the end of this fiscal year, so just wanting also for your board to have that in mind. We feel this program has been tremendously effective, and we'd like to see it sustained or expanded. We feel pretty strongly the North Shore should continue to have a dedicated officer in order to keep up the progress that we've made in that area over this 3 years. Should the program move on to another area, some dedicated staff in that region is needed. And the last program we're reporting on today is a newer program that we have on board, the CDBG grant. It's a mitigation grant that we received from HCD. The purpose of the grant is to focus on making our units that we have more sustainable, more fire safe, more protected from disaster. And so it focuses on 2 things: substandard units and the needs of those units, and then also hazardous vegetation. And so we have a 2-officer team and a technician dedicated to that program. The grant does not have money for abatements, so as where illegal money dumping was all for abatements, kind of no staff, this one's the opposite. This grant supports all staff, but there are no money for abatements, and the focus of the program is more on education of the community around their responsibilities. And so we have been doing a lot of community education around hazardous vegetation and substandard issues, providing resources to the community. If we're talking to a homeowner, we're providing them with a resource to help them resolve their own violations. As part of this grant, we also conducted it was really led by our code enforcement team, but included a lot of folks from our community development team. We conducted a housing condition assessment. The results of this will also go into the upcoming housing elements. We evaluated 920 units in the county, which was about 5% of all improved parcels, and they were divided into zones. Overall, countywide, 35% of properties were classified as substandard, so needing repairs, and only 27% were needing just minor repairs, but 31% were considered sound units, so that was good to recognize. Clear Lake Oaks, Kelseyville, Nice, Lower Lake, and Lucerne showed the greatest need for housing rehab. 75%, we decided to go ahead and take a look at the compliance to Zone 0, even though most folks in the community are not yet familiar with that. This is a pre-assessment, right? Kind of taking a look at what the baseline is. So as we work toward Zone 0 requirements, we will know where we started. And 75% of the parcels we assessed had at least one Zone 0 concern. So we know we have a significant lift in getting the community educated about that program that will come forward from the state likely in the next year or so. And the results of this are, guiding us in looking at what resources are needed, especially for housing rehab. We're working with the Regional Housing Trust Fund to develop a pilot program for housing rehab that we hope to implement over the next probably calendar year, and starting to provide some assistance for those folks who are living in a substandard unit and do not have the resources to make the repairs. So for this team, which again has been in operation a little less than 1 year, this grant started in October of 2005, they have opened 557 cases and corrected 332 violations out of those cases. 270 of those cases are hazardous vegetation, and been able to close 150 of those. The rate of self-abatement is quite high for hazardous vegetation. So again, thank you to the community for working with our officers as needed. And then just a couple last things that are not program specific. Our nuisance abatement fund, which as you know is a separate fund from the fund that is for the division staff and expenses. We have a fund that's specific just for abatement costs. And we are allocating the remainder of those funds for use in 26-27. So at the end of this fiscal year, besides the funds that we're able to recover through liens, that we're going to need to discuss the source of additional abatement funds. As we've said, we're working on a Chapter 13 update, and we're looking at a lot of new language, mostly mimicking state language that already exists and pulling it into our county code around red tags, some concerns that we're working with the DA's office around language that they think would be stronger, RV occupation, and as I mentioned, illegal dumping. We also have several high cost abatements that are kind of pending or in the works, projects that are beyond the scope of our current allocations. And we've been able to clean up a couple of those big scope projects with the illegal dumping funds, but of course those are ended, and we will apply for more grants like that. But just making you aware that there are a couple of special projects we may have to bring back to your board for either a consideration of special funding or additional legal action, so that we can move forward on projects that are kind of outside the current funding scope. And that is what we have today. I would like to thank our entire team. They work incredibly hard out there, and I really believe they are making an enormous difference for the community. So thank you to the code enforcement team. And that's all I have.
Thank you, and I think Supervisor Crandall had first question.
Yeah, no, I think the word social, or is it social nuisance? I don't mind it. The reason I don't mind it because I know what the bottom line is. It's math. I wish there's a better word we could use. I hope there's something we can figure out. But the bottom line is it's meth. When you look at least 90%, maybe even more, of all of these issues, it revolves around meth. All of the streets you've named off, I could even name more. It's all as a result of meth. The houses that burnt, cooking meth. And I know that's something that at our level at times it's very difficult to deal with, especially when it comes to the sheriff. His hands are tied a lot of times, and I do my best to advocate at different state legislation because it flies under the radar, you know. I know that we need to tackle these issues. I worry that it gets more rampant. These folks know that it's limited what anyone can do, so they do squat. They know that they can just pay bills in a house and squat in it. They know that they can park a trailer up in the middle of nowhere and there's not too much you can do. You know, it's just happening consistently. I have to deal with it on the weekends. I drive around, I drive around and see these things. I have people that call me and say, hey, there's a trailer parked here. Hey, there's someone in this house. And, you know, I literally go there. Like, it's annoying, but it's something that it's a reality. I hope it doesn't go to your districts. If it is happening in your districts, I hope it doesn't get more rampant. A lot of times the other thing is there's, and these are all a conglomerate of issues that have all made these behaviors. People that are taking advantage of seniors. What I mean by that is that people are passing on. They lived here, they own the homes, goes to another person. These people either neglect it or they don't come and take care of it, so someone comes in and squats. Or someone doesn't know how to take care of a property. Again, these same people predominantly are on meth. So I'm only trying to point at the biggest beacon of everything, and that's meth. And I wish there's a way we could say this is the meth ordinance or something like that, but I know it's difficult because of the way the law writes. So I don't know. I just hadn't figured I'd get on a soapbox. So I appreciate this report. I know that there's been a lot of work. The illegal dumping is very important in my district and your districts. I know you guys deal with this too, but I just felt like saying that. I hear you on the social nuisance, but I don't know what else to do about it. I just know that we got to do something.
Thank you. Next.
Well, I think the massive investment we've had with Copter in District 3 is how we continue down that road, because it is a combination of multiple enforcements. It's law enforcement, it's code enforcement, it's animal care and control. And that investment is working, and we've moved it through different communities in District 3, and the data is there. We're seeing a big improvement. And so, you know, I'm okay with bringing the social nuisance conversation back to see how we fold it in to having all of those agencies working together, and maybe it's behavioral health also, because we have seen the same homes get cleaned up and then brought back to us a year later. And that, you know, our resources are finite, and the cannabis funding that pays for Copter is precious. And so I think there's just more work to do. And I think it is a multi-agency collaboration, you know, pathway. We've had a lot of successes, but there's more to do. But I want to talk about the hazardous vegetation abatement, because we have 2 staff now and no funding for abatement. We have 1 officer and 1 technician.
The full CDBG mitigation team is 1 officer for hazardous vegetation and 1 officer assigned to substandard housing.
Oh, okay.
And a technician.
So it's 1, okay, and there's 0 budget for abating.
Correct.
How many complaints do we have right now? Because I'm getting them every day in my district from my constituents. And so, you know, what level of complaints do we have? This is the time of year when people are getting really nervous and scared, and they, you know, really want to see some work done. And I need to understand how, you know, we have an ordinance, we have legislated that piece of the problem, but we don't have any capacity to enforce it. So
I would say we have, I think there's approximately 200 hazardous vegetation complaints. This is the first year we've had a full-time dedicated hazardous vegetation officer. His name's Sammy Marsh. We put his name out to the public because part of his job is to put education out there. So when he does address a property with hazardous vegetation concerns, he provides education to the neighboring properties as well as regarding their duties as a property owner. I think we've had the most success of any year this year with hazardous vegetation. You should see a lot more properties with their grass cut, a lot more properties. We focused on certain areas. The Cobb area is a difficult area, given its terrain. So, but I would say, given that this is the first full year, you usually build on the first year to have a better second and third year.
So self-abatement is working to some level, but how many properties do we have that the property owner is not self-abating and we need to abate, but we don't have the
So
funds?
when it comes to those issues, so yes, when there's a property owner around, that makes our job a lot easier. One of the things we've had to do is track down property owners. It's hard to find some of these guys, but we've had much more success this year than we've had in the past. Those properties that are egregiously in violation, we usually kind of look to our local fire districts or departments to kind of get their opinion. If they say, hey, this is something that needs to be abated, if we get that expert opinion, we will then allocate the funds to abate that situation. Primarily, we focus on emergency routes to get in and vehicles in and out, people to get in and out, emergency vehicles to get in and out, and defensible space around structures. But again, this is probably the first real year that I would say is a genuine success because we've had a dedicated full-time officer who has a strong command of the code, understands what what his task is, and understands how to communicate and work with property owners.
So
But there's a lot of them out there, and then there's also county properties that need to be addressed.
County properties, yeah, we need to do our own work. But, so if you do find a property that the owner is unwilling to self-abate, and you said there is funding to be allocated, or there's not?
So for the more egregious ones,
Our
there's-
abatement fund.
we use
Okay,
our,
but I thought there was no funding for
Well, no, there's no money in the grant for abatements. It's just an education. It
the
funds
grant
the
is-
staff, the education, but
So
there's no funding in the
when,
grant.
when
for
the abatement fund was set up, it was really set up for trash and cars and traditional code enforcement issues. Now we brought in cannabis. Now we brought in hazardous vegetation, 2018, 2019. So these are now putting more stress on that abatement fund to address those issues. But right now the fines have had a very strong impact. Of course, people have to be pushed to the precipice before they will take that action. We are coming into the higher severity fire season. August, September, October are our biggest ones. We've gotten out ahead of that, but we can't abate every property in the county if that's where you're going with this. There are a lot of properties out there that we're not going to be able to abate. So we use the mechanisms and the tools that we have available for us. We've even looked to volunteer and nonprofit groups to cut those properties when the owner is deceased or no longer around, it may not meet that egregious category, but it's something that still needs to be brought into compliance.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm answering these questions every day in these
Yeah.
calls from constituents. I'm glad we're having this
The
conversation.
last-
It's very timely, but, okay, so there is a pathway to abate if we can through our abatement funds. What is the term, if I went and submitted a complaint today about my neighbor, which it's not real. I want to be on the record for that.
Mr. Duncan has some hazardous
Yes,
vegetation.
My fire chief neighbor is, yeah, no. What is the turnaround time? Because I was on the phone with a very upset constituent / neighbor last night, and these are just the answers I don't have. So if he were to submit his complaint today, what can people expect for turnaround
So
to get to complaint?
when a complaint is received, the first step we take is we send out a letter with educational materials to that property owner. We try
Within like 5 days?
No, the day the complaint
day?
comes in, a letter is usually going out that day
Okay.
or the next day.
Okay, good.
We understand the urgency and so hazardous vegetation code enforcement is different than traditional code enforcement, cannabis code enforcement, all AVA code enforcement. We recognize that certain times of years there's an urgency, an immediacy. So, but our practice is as soon as a complaint comes in, a letter is generated, and for hazardous vegetation, a letter is generated with guidance, not to cut in the middle of the day, not to use metal, do it in the cooler times. There's a list of those things that are on there, but a letter goes out with informational material about defensible space, Along with the code section that says you have to keep the roadway 30 feet in, free of dead, dying grass, trees have to be limbed 6 feet above grade, that kind of stuff. Our officer then tries to, when he can incorporate it, when he's in that area, to go by and do a first initial assessment. With hazard vegetation, it's not too much, it's what we can see from the roadway. If a complaint comes in and it's about structures deeper on the property, that takes a little more time because we have to honor and respect property rights and that kind of thing. But for the most part, I would say within 2 to 3 weeks, he's out there at the property. Notices probably go out probably within that month, I would say. There is a high volume and there is only one individual. This one individual has got up to speed at an accelerated or expedited rate, because if he didn't, we'd have a problem right now where I would be doing the code hazard vegetation with him. But I'm thankful that we have a qualified individual who can do this. And the other issue, we tried to get ahead of this, so we went to complaints from prior years and started to get with those properties and try to get with those property owners ahead of this fire season, so that we get them to do their part. So we did kind of anticipate this, but we do need to be better at this. We need to improve at this, and there are steps that we need to take. But I would say right now, with what we have, we're doing a pretty good job. But at the same time, I would like to know your neighbor's property or the concerned property, so that we can ensure that that is being addressed.
Okay, well, this is great information for all of our advisory councils. At some point, and if maybe the technician has a little extra time, I would like to see some data on this, on how many complaints, how many self-abatements, what the timeline is, and then how many of those egregious ones that we need to get to are still standing out there. And it doesn't have to happen anytime soon, but it just really would help me understand.
I think we have those statistics pretty much readily available from this presentation. We get that really fast.
Great.
And I do appreciate the comments from Supervisor Crandall and yourself regarding the prior issue. But when it does come to code enforcement, I believe it is an educational issue. It is things that we do, the public needs to understand what we're dealing with, how we're dealing with these things. I think they need to know our processes. And we have taken steps to improve those processes. And but at the end of the day, it's going to boil down to staffing and manpower. This is an older profession where you have to kind of roll up your sleeves, go out there, collect the evidence, produce the notices, and then be able to stay on top of it. When new complaints are coming in, we have to assess them immediately to see the immediate health and safety issue. When you have a bunch of them that come in bulk, that can take away from being able to do that. So case management is tracking something that I preach, something that we've been working on diligently, and every once in a while I have to go in and set reminders so I can remind the officer, the code officers, that, hey, we got to circle back to this one. So it is a challenge. We did take steps to meet that challenge and rise to that challenge, but at the end of the day, when it comes to code enforcement and all aspects, education and understanding, and I do appreciate the board's willingness to want to understand and be educated on these matters, because I think there is a distinction between other professions and other ways like animal control operates, and how the sheriff operates and peace officers operate, and how code enforcement is supposed to operate. Remember, we're not reacting, we're supposed to be preemptive. Get ahead of those health and safety issues before they become problematic to the public. So I do appreciate that statement.
Thank you. Supervisor Sabatier?
Two things. For the copter program, it's an extension of the old school roadmap task force. Was anything left behind to ensure that the roadmap task force area did not revert back to what we eventually got it to? I guess that's my first question regarding roadmap task force and copter.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Roadmap Task Force, which is an award-winning program, we did have that concern that we were going to move to an area, and the gains made in that area, we would not be able to maintain those gains. So we did try to, for that area, we did allow for them to kind of go into Clear Lake Oaks, because we did not have an officer assigned to that area, and we did need to maintain it. The irony of the situation is, after we left the Oaks, some of the issues in that area tend to be exacerbated, or tend to, some of these things just kind of happen. The issues seem to be bigger issues in the Oaks, so we had to kind of redivert our resources to address those issues that were occurring in the Oaks. But so we did try to do our best to maintain and keep a presence in the Oaks, because we didn't want to lose those gains. But at the same time, code enforcement in this county is tough, and issues just seem to kind of arise and pop up just spontaneously, just for whatever reason, for a multitude of reasons. And in the Oaks, we had that issue early on in the first years of Copter, where we kind of had to go address those issues too. I would have loved to have an officer that we could have just staffed for that area, Spring Valley, and possibly Lower Lake, but we didn't have that luxury, so we had to kind of stretch our resources for the Copter program to address those pressing issues in the Oaks as they arose.
Okay. And in my vision and my view, like, how do we know that it's not going back, right? How do we know that we're moving forward? Like, in my personal opinion, when we started Rome That Task Force, I started working on a program to track these things. You are well aware of that. I had different districts in Clear Lake Oaks labeled as District 1, District 2, so that we can eventually score each district and say, hey, you're 8 out of 10, you're 3 out of 10, we need to focus here. We see it degrading back from 8 to 7 to 6, then we can see that there's something that we're not doing, it's going backwards. Are we able to do anything like that, where we can kind of do it? I know that, for example, Director Ewing purchased a piece of software that's being used by both cities as well, so they can use a camera and use AI to drive around everywhere, and it scores our PCI. Is there something we can do that can help score our community so that it helps us to know where should we focus and where are we seeing degradation?
We have a lot more data available at our fingertips than we ever have had before through OpenGov. As you know, we started that in March of 25, so we have a little bit over a year's worth of data. The reporting features in OpenGov as they stand now are not quite as robust as we would have liked them to be, but there are more and more tools coming in that program all the time. We always can work with GIS to try to map cases and that kind of thing. As you know, we don't currently have funds for any software purchases or any, we wouldn't be able to incur any costs on new software or new data programs, but we are investigating all of our options for being able to look at data more thoroughly and in a variety of categories and dashboard styles, and hoping that some OpenGov tools will come onto that platform to help us with that.
And the tool that you're referring to, we did explore that tool as well. There is a tool that'll go around and map properties or code enforcement issue properties, and then as you drive by them, just as you're normal driving to other properties, it will then keep a record and a map of that as well. So we did explore that. At the end of the day, it did boil down to funding and have the funds for that, but I thought that was a pretty neat and cool concept that could be attached to all our vehicles. So as they're driving, it will keep a record of all those properties as it's driving. We are using AI right now. We are actually meeting with our AI team in the next couple of weeks as we're using that for to have better reporting. So when we do a property inspection, we'll be able to take a picture of something, have some keywords. It'll also be able to generate and suggest the codes that would be applicable, which our officer would have to manually choose. So we are expanding and trying to build on that AI tool as well. But to answer your question, in this county, there's not like you're going to say one section is bad and one section is good. These things randomly happen in all areas. Hudson is one. Hudson is a nice, peaceful, quaint community. And they had not one problem property, they had 2 problem properties. And if you throw in the one from 5 years ago, that's a 3rd problem property. We got 2 of the 3 resolved. The 3rd one, it needed special enforcement tools and mechanisms and legal tools to resolve that. I don't want to get into the social nuisance conversation again, but.
Not with me.
Not with you, not with you.
And
I would like to have a conversation with anybody about that. We can call it what you want, but I think we need to provide more information so you understand what we're getting at and why we came to that. I just didn't wake up one day and said, we need this type of social nuisance code. No, I'm not for that. I'm not for more enforcement and more getting on people. But I think in this case, it's necessary. And if you understand, I think education, going back to your comment again, Supervisor Peiska, about education, when you understand the elements that we're against, and I'm pretty sure you're aware of that, it can be a bit much. And they just kind of come from nowhere. And then one day out of nowhere, this property that was pretty nice, all of a sudden there's trash everywhere. There's junk cars everywhere. There's people that I don't know who they are. Now, squatting is not a code enforcement issue. We're well aware what our authority is and where it stops and where it ends. but the issues caused by some of these squatters do become code enforcement issues. And a lot of times I have concerns about the electrical that they're messing with and doing, and playing with that cause some of these fires. So, there are some tools out there. They're gonna need funds for us to have these tools. But I think AI, the best way to supplement a lack of staffing is to have these AI tools at our hand. And we have identified one like you were talking about with Lars that I think would be a great tool, but we just don't have the money for it.
So we're not having that conversation. But just real quick on the hazardous vegetation, and it goes for the other ones, and I'm just gonna leave it with a more of a rhetorical question. I don't need an answer, but if you have 270 cases and you've closed 149, I expect that 121 got penalties and fees and have a bill that they need to pay for not doing their part to move them towards doing their part. And if that's not the case, then we need to have a future conversation as to why. Because we can't just do all this work and then say we don't have money for abatement. There has to be teeth to what we do to make sure that we get people to come into compliance. And it's a rhetorical question. I don't need a response, but I know I've asked you for some of that information, and I'm looking forward to that information, but I'll just leave it at that. Things that do not close, that we can't abate on our own, like we have to have a finished product of we find them for not following through because they are a nuisance to their community and their surrounding areas.
And I know you didn't want to respond, but please, if it's okay, I'd like to respond. Part of our normal process.
Make it brief, please.
I will. Sorry. Our normal process, as soon as there's a violation, a notice of a violation is the first thing that goes out. And we will be coming forward. One of my next projects is to go through all these administrative fines that we've issued to properties, and then to come before the board to record them as a lien on the property. I believe there's the state law that's been passed that will also support us where there was some ambiguity in the past. But notice violation is always our first step once we have determine a violation exists.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from anybody else? I think most of this stuff's been covered, but I will throw out that I do get a lot of hazardous veg complaints too all the time, so I'm constantly telling people to go on the, I've drawn a blank now, OpenGov to file those in there, so hopefully they're doing it. I just had a quick question regarding the discussion that came up on the social nuisance. I think that's kind of similar to what I used to refer to as quality of life issue, kind of the one and the same. So anyway, I would look forward to when we're able to, do some updated work on Chapter 13. I think that'll be helpful to us. So I don't have anything else. I think we need to open to the public still. Anybody in the public wish to comment? Come on up.
Good afternoon, Chair. First, I just want to say it was a great presentation, really good metrics. I'm pleased to see there's been some progress in District 3. I just actually have some questions. Well, first, I think you, Mr. Sabatier, answered about the ones that weren't abated, what's the consequence? I also, in my area, we have a lot of properties where nobody actually lives on. And finding the owner, who the owner is, and getting them motivated to do that. So things that can help with that would be greatly appreciated. The other thing is, and maybe this needs validation, on OpenGov, if you have a property that is a nuisance and you have multiple complaints from multiple people on OpenGov, what I've been told is that several of those complaints get closed because they're duplicates, and they're informed that they're duplicates. And then those people that are concerned about that situation never get the feedback as to what's going on. Having been in the business of installing help centers and things like that, from a metric standpoint, we're required to keep the ticket open until it's resolved. And then if you got 50 tickets for the same complaint, you keep them open until the complaint's resolved, and then you close all 50, or whatever the number may be. I think that would be a better practice. And then a follow-on question to that is, if you do open a complaint and you know it's in the system, how does one know that it's being addressed? What's the process that they can expect to happen? And those are my complaints. Thank you. Or questions, sorry.
Thank you.
And again, thanks for the presentation.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room?
Hi, Roberta McIntyre. Listening to code enforcement since that door was opened real quick, I want to share y'all real quickly a system I built in Sonoma County when I was dealing with complaints on parcels for fire code violations in particular. So if I got a complaint, I'd immediately, as fast as I can get an inspector out there, look at the property. They'd visit the property with an inspection form. On the inspection form, there was language that stated that if they don't bring the property into compliance by the next inspection, they would be charged for that inspection and any subsequent inspections where compliance wasn't met. So then when they go out to do the follow-up inspection to see if the violations were corrected, if they were not corrected, then the property owner was told, okay, you're going to get charged for this inspection since you're not in compliance. And then the next inspection, if it's not in compliance, you'll be charged for. If the other hypothetical, if, for example, they went out there first time follow-up and the inspections were, or the violations were corrected, then they would not be charged for the inspection. That would be burdened by the county. So it seemed to work pretty effectively, and were able to get some form of funding stream into the county to cover the cost of those inspections that were made by staff that otherwise wouldn't be captured. Just a thought. I'd be happy to share my experience with that project or program with code enforcement here at any time. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Do we have anyone online? What was that? Guest, if you could state your name.
Thank you, Board. I'd like to address Mr. Beltramo stated that a letter goes out, and I'm a little unclear. That letter goes out with no verification of the complaint. It's not even verified via the satellite program that we pay for. And I'd like to see information included with the notices, such as resources available, how to safely abate, and the local programs. I know you said that it goes out in the letter, but it should be with the notice that's physically posted on the property. You could put programs such as clerk, Firewise, reaching out to the town hall, just other ways to help somebody that's not familiar with the area. For an example, it's claimed that the property in Clear Lake Oaks where the house burnt down had 5 notices from CDD, and it was a homeowner from outside of the area not familiar with the fire hazards, and that's what resulted in 3 homes being lost in that area. My next thing is, at the beginning, it was stated that no cohort 3 cannabis grants will be included in this and it will be brought back later. I'd like to know why cannabis is consistently left out of these discussions, like the annual crop report and grant updates. What is happening with the grant funding? What do abatements look like for legal and illegal grow sites? We were told for years that grant funding had been made available for a grow site in our area, and then the cleanup was not feasible. Were those grant funds returned? What happened to them? As there were other sites in the area that could have still been abated, and here we are 4 years later. These are sites along creeks, lead to watersheds, and affect the environment. Also, one other thing, the last slide that you guys saw in the presentation for reference, that was a property that has numerous violation notices. Some supervisors may recall an incident back in December of loose horses in the High Valley area where animal control was involved. The horses came from that property in the last photo, and those horses were never claimed. There are still other animals on that property and even children living there. So my last thing is that I know it's been said that the OpenGov complaints are anonymous, but as far as I can tell, if I go on to OpenGov and file a complaint, you are unable to do it anonymously. So I'd like to know if that has been fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have anyone else online? User 12, if you could state your name.
Skylayla, Pillsbury Family Farms, and the two words in the memo that caught my attention was the social nuisance. The memo says there is persistent social nuisances that are not currently addressed under Chapter 13, and that Chapter 13 is being updated to address them. I encourage you to start looking at how other places in California have already handled this, because Lake County isn't the first government to deal with the issue. There's a few ordinances out there worth looking at before you finish yours. Sacramento has an entire social nuisance code, and what I like about their approach the most is that they just didn't create another enforcement power. They created the process that goes with it. They define the behavior that they're trying to address, and they have an evidentiary standard, and they have hearings, written decisions, and a process for challenging them. And then there's Hayward. Hayward makes the important distinguish between the nuisance caused by the physical condition of somebody's property and a nuisance caused by the behavior of the people on that property. It's an important distinction for Lake County to think about and to take a good look at, because weeds and garbage, an unsafe building, or an unpermitted structure are one thing, and human behavior is something different. Once code enforcement starts dealing with human behavior, they can overlap between community development and law enforcement. And Hayward's ordinance recognizes the difference while also establishing the notice and the enforcement procedures and ways for people to challenge them. I'm not saying that Lake County should copy any one of them word for word, but look at them and use them as tools. Looking at Sacramento and Hayward and seeing what works, seeing what protections they put in place, and decide what makes sense for Lake County going forward. Because if you're going to expand Chapter 13 from primary dealing with conditions on property into dealing with behavior that's occurring, make sure that you're clearly establishing where code enforcement's responsibility ends and law enforcement begins. Establish what evidence is required, establish notice and the fair opportunity to be heard. You don't have to reinvent it, but learn from the different governments that already have the homework done, improve upon it, and hopefully build a better Chapter 13 that another county might one day look at and say, hey, Lake County finally got something right. Mullingham.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else online? Donna, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Donna Makowitz speaking as resident of District 3 only. Thank you to Tom for his earlier comment. I'd like to also share when the public reports violations on open.gov, if another violation for that parcel and similar violation has been sent in and recorded, the report say that if I reported it, it then becomes closed when it's not really closed, just my complaint record is closed. So reviewing and looking at statistics on what is an open violation versus closed will not ever be accurate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Donna. Do we have anyone else? I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the board. Regarding I'll look for clarification. My understanding of when I've used OpenGov, you have to have an account to be able to use it, but once you put your information in, you can click. There's a box that you can make it to where you're going to be anonymous when you file that complaint, or you can also leave your name in there. Is that correct? Is that how it works? Am I remembering that right?
We have built it so that the complainant's information is available to us, but it's not available to the public.
Okay,
so when
in
we
every
say it's
case.
anonymous, we mean it's anonymous to the public.
Okay.
But we do have the requirement that as a complainant, you must provide us with your contact information so that we could follow up with you.
Okay.
I have a couple of other clarifications if
Yeah.
the board is interested. In terms of duplicates, what has been said here today is correct. The way that the system is built, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So one complaint is one case. There's not really a way in OpenGov. As you know, data tools and software tools are great, but they all have limitations. And so once we have multiple complaints on one parcel for the same violations, we work one of those cases. It's a case management system ultimately. A side benefit of that is that information can be, statuses can be available to the complainant. That's a side benefit, but the system is really a case management system. So the officer is going to manage their case all the way through to completion on one of those cases that have been opened through a complaint. So it is a limitation to OpenGov that we acknowledge. Couple of other things. When we say a letter goes out immediately, it's a courtesy letter. We do often verify via the satellite tools that are available to us. Just as a point of clarification, code enforcement is no longer paying for a software subscription for satellite services. We have other tools available to us for free now. And educational materials absolutely go out with both that courtesy letter and the notice of violation, and in any personal contact made with that property owner. And those educational materials do identify the local resources, clerk and Tara, and all of those local resources that are available.
Thank you. Is there anything else from board members? I think we've covered it, and appreciate staff noting some of the concerns that came out. So we'll go ahead and adjourn for lunch and come back at 1:40.